All right. We are back for part two of the Zion Race Recap podcast. We left off at the top of Smith Mesa, which is generally mile 45 ish, somewhere around there. And we are going to dive right back into what's ultimately the back half of this race here. Goldstein, say what's up to the people.
What's going on, team? What's going on, tribe? What's going on, people? Thanks for joining us on part two. Um, it's just one of those things. You can't tell it all at once. It's all so big. And wait until we get like the spin-offs where it's like, each individual athlete is going to be demanding their own space to either correct what we have said or to expand on it. So just really pumped to get into, I think sort of like the heart of the race, and especially where a lot of the meaningful moments happened, and certainly where a lot of the moments we didn't want to find ourselves in, but were forced to sort of move through. There's a lot of those moments in this back half, so we're really excited to share the story. And as always, for the people who are involved in the race, we are doing our best, and we will do our best to provide as honorable and as accurate and as honest a recapturing of the race, for everybody. So we'll put that out there, that we're just doing our best here.
Do we want to give maybe just like a quick summary of maybe like how we view what's gone on up until this point? Like from my perspective, I guess the first half of this race, or up until, mile 45, this is really like the main part of the struggle of the effort, at least especially for the five athletes who end their journey at 51.8. And what we're heading into now is where we arrive to this point, right? Where everybody thinks that they're coming into this ultra and that crossing the finish line is going to be their breakthrough. And that's going to give them the unlocks that they need. But what we all come to find very soon is that we are all presented with a decision that we don't want to make in a state that we don't want to be in. And we're suffering big time. I would say that maybe that's a shift. We go from struggle to suffer, pre Smith Mesa and even up Smith Mesa to then post Smith Mesa. Anything else you want to add to that, or anything that you maybe think we did not cover in the first half that you want to just sprinkle in to add a little bit more color, since we both listened back to it?
I don't think anything is really missing so much in that first half. I would just like to point out and acknowledge our crew and the Pacers, just and the monumental role that they played in the success of the day, the success of the team house, and the success of the experience for everybody overall. I'm not sure we properly acknowledge them in the first race pod. So I just want to make sure that those people, the crew, like Lynn, uh, Trevor's dad, right? Trevor's dad, huge hero, literally flew in for the start of the race, saw the end of the race, and then flew home because he's working. And I think that just shows the kind of commitment and the sacrifices that the people who supported us showed and showed up with. And then, the people who agreed to pace us, your sister Madison, Lath, Blaine, Mike Donatelli, even Hero Cam, who was not in a medical position to even like put on running shoes, but he was there kind of all day waiting around. So I would say if there's one omission from the first part of the race, pod, would be proper recognition, respect, and celebration of those people.
Beautiful. And a little bit more action with them is coming up in this part anyway. Uh, so absolutely valid though. Okay. So I believe that where we really ended it was that you and I had different perceptions of what was going on at the Smith Mesa aid station. So maybe I'll just let you roll with what your understanding was of the situation and the race at that point.
Yeah, and I listened back to that part yesterday before we did our symposium call with the team where we did sort of like an open Q&A race recap. And I think you're right about the environment and the attitude and the sort of the energy shift at the top. And I think for me, it was my mind was really hoping that was going to be the case. But in my gut, I kind of knew it wouldn't play out. And I was just hoping to be wrong.
Yeah.
Because as you mentioned so many times in that sort of coming up, it's like we had worked so hard just to get up there. And if this was a trail we were familiar with and we weren't starting to get into the darkness in the night, I don't think I would have had that gut feeling. But knowing that we were about to move into the darkness and we weren't going to be, I don't think, relying on what I thought was going to be like a big time celebration for us. Like, okay, hot part of the day, down on the desert floor. I kept saying it. I'm like, this is the hardest part of the race. This is the hardest part of the race. And we're all going to shine when we get together in the dark because we're going to all have each other and we're going to be able to move through that doubt. But I wasn't expecting everybody's willpower to be burned up in just
Mhm.
getting to the top. Like when you say we worked so hard to get up the top, like people were getting ready to hit zero on their tanks. That's how little was left. And I think in my gut, that was the signal I was feeling. It's like I'm not sure collectively we've got enough to even face the darkness right now. And that ended up being true. So I think you're right when you suggest that the energy there was this feeling that we had just done this stupid hard climb and we don't have to do that for a while. So we'll be good. Like and we can catch our breath and catch up and start to regain some positive momentum. But once we started out and I'm still at the back and I'm just simply asking questions like, hey, you guys feel like we can trot? Like, can we pick up the pace a little bit? Can we start running? And when the answer was like, not right now, or yes, but then within 10 seconds, that run started to turn to a walk, you kind of just like, oh, shoot, like we don't have it. Like, and we're not going to get it back. So I think that's where I was. And I think my gut was a bit confirmed in the first little mile and a bit, leaving that aid station on the top there.
Yeah. And I believe that I mentioned this at the end of the first part of this pod, right? But when we got to that top of the aid station, I think just the relief of finishing that Smith Mesa effort gave me a lot of optimism. And also seeing Josh Payne, that gave me a lot of optimism. Seeing Josh Payne's mindset after him running up Smith Mesa, being there right there with Jamie. I hadn't been with Jamie in what felt like hours, maybe since basically I hadn't run with Jamie since before mile 25, maybe. I mean, of course, we were together. I had rechunked him right at the 31 Buffalo, 31 Water Buffalo. Um, but I hadn't really been like with him in ages. And so to be just with him at the water stop, um, that was motivating for me. Um, and then just to also have the whole unit mostly back together. I don't know if I mentioned this in the first part of the pod. Maybe it was just last night in the symposium, but it felt like uh, we were all separated either in as a solo person or in like a pair going up Smith Mesa by, I don't know, maybe like 70 yards per sort of separation. And so it created a little bit of distance. I mean, we were all kind of on the same section, but we're not really close. And then we get up to the top, and it's like, okay, we're kind of back together. I had seen Louis and Trevor, and Louis goes to take off, and I didn't think anything about that being like a final point that I'd see them. I was just pumped that we were all back up there and that we were headed to a descent. That's what I was just like thrilled with. No more uphill for the moment. And we take off out of that aid station, and Jamie and I are in the front. Trevor and Louis have taken off, so they're farther up ahead. Um, it's Jamie and I in the front of this pack. Then Libby is shortly behind us. And then it's some order of Josh Payne, Spina, you, and Brandon. And at this point, we're feeling solid. I was feeling really optimistic related to everything I just said. I sent a video into the team and I was like, we got our freaking mojo back. That's what I said. I was like, we're back. We just finished this crazy climb. And I think this is also part of just me wishing that I knew the course better and knew the terrain better. Like I really wish that I knew what we were getting into and what we had coming up ahead. And so um, me and Jamie are running up, and we've got a little bit of a descent for, I don't know, maybe it was a mile, maybe not even a mile. But then we hit this punchy little climb that's like one kind of final little peak up on the top of this Smith Mesa. And I'll start to sprinkle in some of my own like tactical learnings from the race. But at this point, um, I allow my heart rate to basically rise up to my threshold. And I have this sense of urgency that is not so much related to our time in the race. It's more related to wanting to capitalize on the fact that we got some energy back. And so I'm pushing up this climb. I'm doing a good job of settling once I see my heart rate rise and like checking my effort and bringing it down, but I'm not doing a good enough job of not letting it rise to begin with.
Mhm.
Like my heart rate threshold is low 160s, and I'm like letting my heart rate get up into the high 150s and even touch 160. And like that is just a massive tactical error on my part to even let it get that high. Um, but I'm kind of feeling this sense of like the mojo's back. Let's keep moving, whatever. So we get up over that. It was a little hard to see some of the flags at that point. It wasn't quite sunset just yet, but in terms of just like how the trail was laid out, I remember being like, all right, let's make sure that we're seeing a flag here so that we're on the right spot because it wasn't such a clear trail. It was kind of like us just going up this little cliff of a mountain almost. And we make our way up. We get over it. I remember I took a little bit of caffeine. I took 100 milligrams of caffeine. And I wait up for everybody to basically come through. And then that same order of procession from the aid station exit basically continues. And Jamie and I are up in front. And out of nowhere, one of my favorite moments of the whole race goes down. So Libby and I had just freaking earned the Smith Mesa climb, right? And I'd been glued in with Libby and Brandon even before that, right? Coming out of the panic aid station. Or maybe that was lead, or yeah, whatever it was. And I had probably been with Libby for a couple of hours now. And she was sort of just behind me at this point as we're making our way. And out of nowhere, Jamie and I are running side by side and Livy comes up and just runs right past us. And we were walking. And so I'm like, holy shit, she freaking got it back. Let's go. And she had her phone in her front vest pouch. It was playing some music. And she's like, I just needed some tunes. And so she cruises up, and it was at this really beautiful part of the trail where it's like this red rock mountain that we're on, but there's like green trees interspersed. And we're in this descent that's almost like winding, but then it bucks up to this. I wouldn't call it a climb, but it sort of goes around this edge of the mountain, and you can see farther up ahead on the trail, is really my point. And so Libby takes off. She runs by us. She's got the vibes back, and she's wearing a red shirt. And I just get to see her red shirt running down through the trail and making her way, right? She's probably 100 yards up ahead of us now, moving up to 200 yards. And in my head, I'm like, she's going to go catch up to Louie and Trevor. And I'm like, she's totally got it back. And not only did that give me a lot of hope like in the moment, But that gave me a lot of hope for the remainder of the race because I'm like, listen, I've spoken about how hard we worked, right, to even get up to the top of Smith Mesa. But the whole idea of making this race happen, in my mind, is we just need to have enough faith that we can get it back after we lose it. That's the whole idea. I'm not expecting that we're not going to have to work our asses off. We were working a little bit harder than I had expected earlier in the race, but I expected that that was going to happen. And it was all about our ability to get it back. And so in my mind, I'm like, okay, we got to the top of Smith Mesa. We had this regroup on the top of Smith Mesa. We got fuel, we got water. We weren't really rushed through that aid station, in my opinion. And we then hit a little bit of a descent, right? We did have that little punchy climb, but not really related to this observation. I'm like, this is the formula. This is the strategy. We arrived, right? We endured the challenge of it. We reached the top. We get to relax and reset. We got some descent, and now we can get it back. And so that gave me just like extreme optimism related to the rest of the race. Um, but it was a little bit short lived. And maybe this is a good time to check into now what's going on with your group in the back, because now there's a relatively clear separation between where Jamie and I are positioned. Libby's ahead of us, and then where the four of you are in the back.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how you talk about like rising up, right? Endurance, it's about waves, right? You feel good, you feel bad. Uh, I think it was in one of our cafes where you talked about like the nature of endurance is to bring yourself to the breaking point as often as possible, to the quitting point. And that's exactly what we do. Like for anyone who's run a long distance out there, like you know that you hit a wall, but then all of a sudden you get a wind. You get a second wind or a third wind or a fourth wind. So coming into this 100-mile race, it's like, when are we going to get our 13th wind? When are we going to get like our 20th wind? Because it's gonna be up and down like that. And just tactically, the difficulty of trying to move as a 9-person unit over 100 miles together is that everybody's waves are not synced up together. So when some people feel good, other people feel bad. And when you feel good, you want to push. And when you feel bad, like you do not. And that creates a little bit of a difficulty in syncing up everybody's individual rhythms with how they're feeling on the race into a coherent team strategy that allows us to capitalize in the good moments and make us coherent. So it's like Libby gets this push, right? Libby gets this whatever we'll call it, like the 15th wind or something, is maybe even more than that because she was in it for a long time. And you're just such a hero and you're super strong, Libby, and we just love you for that. Who pushes through to like a 20th wind, right? Like it's just this, it's amazing. There was no ability for anybody in that back group to muster up any kind of a wind. Um, Mentally, it was pretty difficult, I would say, for Dylan and for Brandon to get themselves up. Josh, it was apparent what was going on with him was a physical thing, was a medical thing. Like he, as you described, his mind was there and he was trying to push. Like out of the 3 people, right? I would say that he wanted to move quickly, but his foot was blown up. And he just sent us a message yesterday that what happened to his foot. It was a dislocated bone inside of it. So we're literally talking about a guy with a broken foot now. Okay. So it's 2 people that are struggling mentally, spiritually, finding it difficult to tap into motivation, discipline, commitment, affirmation, whatever it is, it's difficult. And we got one guy who wants to push, but now physically is unable to. And every time he tries to push, the pain becomes so great that it's stopping his ability to trot. And it really is. I think that's the distinction between you, Jamie, and Libby at that moment, and the 4 of us. It's like I'm trying to look for a moment where it's like, okay, we're in a little bit of a down. We can get a little bit of momentum. Can we muster up a little bit of a run? Can we muster up a little bit of an effort? And 15 seconds, 20 seconds at most. And then it was right back into that walk, right back into that shuffle. And it just became very clear to me that this is how it was going to go until we got to the next water station and then to the next aid station. That it was not going to be waves. It was going to be grind
Yeah.
through it all. So I guess that's sort of like a little bit of what's going on in the back there. You guys got a little bit of a wind and were able to push, and we were never able to capitalize on anything like that physically or mentally. The four of us at the back there as a group.
Yeah, and I definitely want to make sure that we spend some time with your trek with that group, but I just want to paint a little bit more color. So I chatted with Brandon yesterday and got some insight into how he was doing at this time. And Brandon had shared that he really wanted to address a hot spot on his foot and change his shoes or fix something up at the Smith Mesa aid station. But because he came in last, he didn't feel that he had the time to. And so he didn't. And as a result, that was a slight limiter for him moving forward. And he actually said that once we hit that little descent, then made it over that punchy little climb, and then headed into the descent that ultimately guided us towards the water buffalo atop flying monkey. He said that in the beginning, there was a part of him that didn't want to leave Spina behind. And so he really viewed that as a positive from this inflection point of the race for him. But while there was a positive there, he said that what ultimately transpired was a bit of a negative in the sense that settling back with Spina allowed him to hop on the struggle bus a little bit. And this was a big learning lesson for you and I organizing a group like this, is that we really saw that pairs and quads seemed to create this situation where low vibes and negative energy could amplify amongst that group. And we saw that when there were people in trios, it seemed to have some layer of accountability where the group's vibe wouldn't get too low. You know, maybe one person would be struggling and able to just kind of hang in the back. And I even know that that happened with the guys who finished. Um, but we definitely saw that pairs and quads made it difficult at times. And I would say that this situation that you're diving into here is the main situation where there's a quad, and people really start to struggle. So, um, I guess to sort of understand where then like Libby and Jamie and I are heading. So Jamie and I, we end up catching up to Libby. So Libby had this gas that she found and this fuel and this energy that she tapped into, and then a little while later, you know, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes, I don't know, maybe 30 minutes, Jamie and I catch up to her, and um, I end up deciding to take a leak, and so I just sort of tell Jamie I'm taking a piss. And I think that this is the moment that Jamie and I separate. I am not 100% positive. I'm like a little bit grayed out on what went down to have ultimately Jamie in the front solo, me in the middle solo, and then Libby behind me solo. And there is this, I don't know, maybe it's a 20-minute stretch. And this is where the sun is really starting to set. So like it's not dark by any means, but like the sun is down and it's getting into that dusk time. And I almost feel like I went into like a little bit of a trance in this time because like I don't really understand why Jamie was then all of a sudden like 50 yards ahead of me. And like I could see him for a while. And I knew that Libby was kind of just behind me, but like nothing was really going on to shift that up. And I would say that we carried that out for a little while until I ultimately pulled off to go to the bathroom. And I had actually seen another runner come up, and I heard her, and I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna run. I'm gonna run with you." And as I said that, Libby was right there and heard me, and Libby like called out to me. So then Libby and I synced back up, and Libby and I end up continuing for, I don't know, it must have been another 2 miles and probably 40 plus minutes of pure walking into this water buffalo that's atop a flying monkey. And before I go any further, I want to start to get into actually, I'll just share us getting to flying monkey, I guess, because then we'll hear you coming up. So this was another challenge with the watches showing different distances than the aid station markers that we knew of. And um, I actually thought that the next thing that we were going to get to was the crew aid. And so we get to this water buffalo after walking for way too long. Another tactical error. We should have been doing some run segments. And I was working hard to get the vibes up. I was asking Libby to tell me stories. She told me that she hit like 11 threes in a basketball game once. We were talking about that a little bit, but like I was really trying to get the vibes up and the energy up and the conversation up, and it just wasn't clicking. And so we just sort of continue with this moseyed effort into this water buffalo. And I think we're getting to the crew aid. And I'm like, fuck, there's a water buffalo, which means that we've got a while longer to get to the crew aid. And I knew that the crew aid was 51.8, and my watch was saying something over 50. I think it was actually 51.08, actually, now that I think about it. Ironic that it was oh 08 versus 80, but regardless, not at the crew aid. And so we get into this water buffalo, and there are two athletes there. And one of them is this chick who is definitely hurting, but she's in pretty good spirits. And she's like a little bit, jestful about just the situation. Then there's a guy, and I asked him if he's done this before. He said he's done it before, but he immediately goes, I'm having a shit day, which, like, just not what you want to be hearing when you are in a difficult spot. And it's like, shit, this guy has done this before, and he's not doing as well as he must have done when he's finished this successfully. And I'm right here with him. And so it was like, okay, shit, we need like a vibe check. Out of nowhere, this guy comes down from the other direction of the trail, which I didn't even really know was going on. And he is picking up flags, and he is a sweeper. And so I'm like, I get right up to him. I'm like, all right, what's the deal? I like basically do like a reset. I'm like, we need a vibe check. We need some good energy. Like, have you done this before? What's going down? Like, give us some insight here. Again, I'm just like grasping at straws for something external to be able to juice us up. And so this guy is like, listen, my name's Matt. People call me the Hulk. And I have done this race before. I have crewed this race before, and I have been sweeper for this race. And sweeper basically means that you're trailing all the actual runners and you're picking up all the flags that mark the trail. And he's like, I'm about to head up onto the top of this mesa. It's a 6 mile loop, and you guys are completely fine on time. He's like, you guys can walk until sunrise and you will be totally good. And so I'm like, sweet. Like, this is what we needed to hear. This is exactly what I needed to hear. We're in a good spot. And so we basically have this little situation with him. I thank him for his good vibes and his energy. And Libby and I start to make our way down this flying monkey descent. And again, this is one of my errors on just like tactically not exactly knowing where this trail was leading and like what are we getting into? What is this next section of the race? And we get like maybe 50 feet down the trail, and the trail had basically made this really sharp U-turn. We came into the water buffalo, and then it makes a sharp U-turn into a descent. And as we're making this descent, we're 50 feet into the trail. I hear people coming from behind us on the trail, and I shout out, hoping that it's you guys, and it is you guys. So before we talk about us getting together, I want to hear a little bit more about you guys even just getting to that point, because I have been, as I've been telling my family the story of the race, I have been referring to you guys as the Goldstein Caravan, mainly because Josh Payne had said that he was grasping at straws and trying to just get some energy and some conversation going. And he's asking you to just tell a story. And you're like, what do you want to know? And so you guys get into chatting about the Roman circus, which I just think is freaking hilarious. We are getting into the night. It's essentially 50, I don't know, 49 of this race, and you guys are doing your best to just keep moving forward and having a 20-minute lecture on the Roman circus. So paint some color for what's been going on back there.
I was really fired up about the Romans too. It was great. I was just leaving it. Oh, and you think that's really messed up and weird. Let me tell you what's even weirder and stranger. Like, oh, you thought that was gruesome. Let me tell you about this mass murder episode. Like, that's pretty much what Roman Sport was. It's just giant mass murder for the crowd. Yeah. There's a lot that happened up there between the four of us. I would say that we settled into some pairs after a while. Um, After we sort of all caught up together. Initially, it was sort of like Brandon and Dylan and I at the back. You mentioned sort of like not wanting to leave Dylan behind, and when Dylan gets into sort of like the pain zone, he really goes into his own universe. I've been on the trails enough times with him to seen that play out, and we've done races together where I've seen this happen. So it was kind of like the three of us at the back. Physically, this is the one part of the day where I start to notice that I could have an issue that could start to become a real big problem. And it's just like a stomach thing. It's like a little bit of like gas, a little bit of uncomfortable pressure. I want to get rid of it. So we pause for a little second. I take care of the stomach issue. I feel super light. And Brandon and I kind of make this mental shift where we understand that it's like Josh and Dylan are kind of in the pits. We're the two at the back here. It's kind of our responsibility to be light and to bring in a positive attitude and to try and take away some of the heavy burden of the suffering that everybody is feeling. Him and I click into, and this is when I start to summon a lot of the courage and sort of like the strength of the authority that I have as a coach and as a leader. And I kick into trail running rabbi mode, I guess is a great way to call it, where I'm effectively doing a sermon as we're walking through the top of this mesa. Uh, and one of the things that I've been doing with some of the people on the team, a couple of the Jewish members of the team, is we've been doing Torah study for the past couple months. So I'm like super versed in Exodus, which is probably the greatest story to be versed in when you're traversing 100 miles in the desert into the unknown. So I begin talking, and Brandon and I have had some initial conversations sort of like about religion. So we're talking about sort of like his fundamentalist upbringing and like the role of traditions and why we do the things that we're doing. So it gave me a really interesting opportunity to dive into some of the things that I've been exploring in Exodus. The importance of ritual, the importance of preparation, the importance of just consecrating acts as a way to um, display our sort of like inner divinity. Uh, the one thing that I mentioned a whole bunch of times, it's this idea that outward consecration is a reflection of inner sanctification. So the things that we do in the outside, the actions that we do, should reveal the truth of who we are on the inside. And that's a really good thing to be talking about when you're struggling physically and emotionally and spiritually trying to get through this 100-mile race, where it's like, like every time we step forward one time, we reveal the strength inside of us, like that we're not quitters and that we will not quit and that we will continue to move forward. So that's a pretty good conversation. The four of us are kind of starting to try to tap into some of that strength, but that lightness goes away pretty quickly, and we're left with just physical pain, physical struggle, and the dawning of the emotional and spiritual realization that this is not happening, like that the race is over, like, and that this is the last part of the race for this group of people. And I think each individual had that moment on their own. um I didn't share that particular moment with Brandon and with Dylan, but I did share that moment with Josh. As I mentioned, like he's got a broken foot. He's got a dislocated bone in his foot, and he is just eking every single thing out. So we eventually sink into these pairs where it's Dylan and Brandon. They're kind of in their silent struggle, and they're sort of, we're not going to call it like a pity party, but it's like you're hurting, I'm hurting, we're both hurting together. We can move in silence together, and they kind of have this good thing going on. But Josh is like wanting to push, right? He's wanting to run, he's wanting to be in the race, and every time he tries, it's just this wall of physical pain is just too great for him to overcome. And I kick into rabbi mode again. And we've had this long, I talked in the first one about this long conversation that him and I had on the desert floor about some of our similarities in terms of our disposition. Um, and so I start telling him about the biggest failure of my life, which is me kind of striking out into the world of entrepreneurship and online education as a way to escape the university, and effectively like coming up zero on my bet by the end of 2022. I had made certain promises to my wife about what I would be able to contribute financially if she just gave me the permission to quit the university for good, which she did. And I don't need to get into the exact details here about exactly what happened, but let's just say it ended up with me in December in my kitchen, like in tears, telling her that I had failed, and that I had not fulfilled my promise, which was the first time that I'd ever tried for something with like good effort in my life, and it totally blew up in my face. And that's something similar to what was occurring with Josh. He was looking for something that could break him, something that could finally break him, that he wasn't able to overcome through his own effort. Um, and there's just that moment. It was that realization that he knows, like, I'm not finishing this race. Like, I want to, I have all the mental determination, but it's not happening for me. It's not going to happen. I'm not able to fight through this. I'm not able to turn it on. I'm not able to get past the pain like I thought I could. Um, and my race is over. And it was a very heavy moment. I gave him the support and the space that he needed. It wasn't a very long time. And then we got up and we kept moving. And I was just saying, let it go. Like, you got to let it go. Right. This is how we're going to finish. This is how we're going to hold our head up high. This is how we're going to find pride in our effort. And we're going to find the meaning and the positive value of it together as we make our way to the next aid station. And then it was just managing the oncoming darkness and this realization that like we're stuck up here until we get to the next place. And that's it. So there was a lot of don't worry. It's like, what? Oh, we're coming up close to the time. Like, what's this going to look like for getting a mile 100? I'm like, we're not thinking about any of this, guys. Like, the only thing we're worried about is finding the aid station. And the only thing we need to worry about is the next turn. So we started this mantra, turn by turn. We're just going turn by turn, guys. Like, step by step, we weren't quite there. But up on that part of the mesa, it's windy. You can't really see too far ahead of you on the trail. And now it's getting dark. And this idea of the numbers on our watches being misleading and starting to play mind tricks with us, like, we're already at mile 50. We should be at the water station already. Why aren't we at the water station? I'm like, well, it doesn't matter. There's one turn ahead of us. We're moving past this turn. Then we're going to take the next turn. And then we're taking the next. And it's at this moment where Josh is like, can you please just tell us something? Like, we need you to be prof. Like, what stories do you have? And I said, just tell me what you want me to talk about. And so he's like, the Romans. So I clicked into prof mode, and I think Dylan told me this afterwards. He's like, oh, I'd already heard those stories. So I made the conscious decision to move back with Brandon and not listen to you. I'm like, oh, that's fine. I'm fine. And I actually said this. I'm like, I will go into prof mode as long as nobody pushes me off the mountain. like, so just so you know, you're asking for this. You're asking for me to just spew off information, and I'm not going to stop. And you don't get to hit me. Like, you don't get to be physical with me because I know it's about to get annoying. So don't push me off the mountain. That was the deal I made with them, and they were fine. So that was one of the things that we went to. But I know that there are some buttons I'm not able to push. Like, we can't go to the tough love spot because everybody's broken. And then it's just like, well, if I start pushing on those buttons, like I'm just going to break people that are already in a vulnerable position. So it was really about maintaining momentum and positive movement and doing whatever we could. So I'm just searching for every positive thing that I can get to push on. But then it gets dark. And then for the first sort of moment in a long time where I start to think about what I'm experiencing, because I haven't thought about myself basically since that top of the Smith Mesa aid station there. Actually, that's not true. I took care of my stomach issue. That was the last time I thought about myself. Sorry about that. Um, and then all of a sudden I realized, like, wait a second, it's pitch black right now. I've never been on this trail before, and I'm starting to worry about where we're going. And like that's a bad place to be in. It gets that pit in your stomach, the unknown. At one point, it's just like Josh and I are effectively sort of like leading in the dark. And it's just so funny the things that happen in the race because one of the things that Josh gave away when we got to the crew at mile 25 or whatever, he's like, I don't need this headlamp anymore. Like, I'll pick it up later. Um, and lo and behold, we're up on the top of this mesa and it's pitch black now. We're in the middle of the night. You know, we are seeing shooting stars and creepy Starlink going across the sky, which if anybody has seen that before, woof, that is creepy stuff. Not comfortable. I don't like that. Um, it's like a giant line of moving things in the sky. It's huge. It's crazy to see. Um, but now he's like, shoot, like of all the things I could have given away, it's like the 2 ounce headlight. Like, because I was trying to save like weight or not have this extra thing in my pack. It's like, oops. So he only has this little spotlight that he's trying to attach to like his hat, to his poles, to his belt, and none of these are really working. So him and I are at the front. I'm the only one with effectively a working light. And as you even mentioned, in the daytime, this trail is not very easy to follow. And now it's the darkness, and we don't know where we're going. And I get that sinking feeling like we're in a really bad spot here. This is not good. And so now we're into like survival mode almost. And I just kick into we just need to be safe and we just need to get to the next place where there are other people and we need to do it as fast as possible because I got guys up here that wanted to quit 3 hours ago and we are starting to get into the biggest problem part, which is in the dark on a trail you don't know where you're going or how far it is to the next semblance of another person. Um, so I'm at the front and we just kick into pink ribbon mode or to reflective ribbon mode where it's like as long as we see a ribbon we can feel comfortable and it's like we see a ribbon shouting back to Dylan and Brandon, it's like we're good, follow us up here, follow our voice, follow our light, we're in the right spot. We end up, I don't even know how long we do that for in the dark. It's probably about an hour or so. The whole ordeal feels like it's like an entire day, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
Like time just is completely warped right now because we don't know the mile marker we're at. We don't know where the next aid station is. We can't see where we're going. Everybody wanted to be done. Like one of the things that occurs for me mentally is like I need to get rid of the idea that this race is something that I can do as fast as possible. Otherwise, I'm going to start having negative feelings towards the people that are holding me back. So it's in this moment, kind of at the top, where I'm like, I need to release the race. I need to give up the race. I need to quit the race in essentially um, take on this role where it's now just we need to be at the aid station safe, and that's the mission. Like, and if we do that, we're winning. And if that's an hour before the cutoff, cool. Maybe then I can figure out a way to go back out. If it's 10 minutes after the cutoff, that's awesome. Like I don't care about that. So, you know, I'm now in a spot where I'm not even caring about the race finale. And I'm in that mindset for probably like 2.5 hours or 3 hours already of just not caring about the race and just focusing in on getting these people safely down this trail. At one point, I actually take Josh off the trail and we're not even on the right spot. And when you're a trail runner or when you're hiking, you don't always need to know where you were going, but you better be sure you know when you're not going the right direction. Like that has to be a very strong gut impulse. And I got that within about 100 meters. It's like, nope, we are not on the right place. Go back, go back, go back. Right. So it's not easy. It's easy to get on the wrong track. It's easy to get lost. And unfortunately, it's actually easy to fall off the side too, because we're walking right up along the edge of this mesa or along this cliff. And I just remember seeing a light and yelling out and being like, "Who is up there? Who is that?" And it was you. And I was just like, "Oh, yes, finally, people." And it's our team. And it was just like this wonderful thing. But you were still probably like, it still took us about 15 minutes, I think, to get to you.
Yeah, we were at least a couple hundred yards, maybe not 15 minutes, but we were at least a couple hundred yards ahead of you.
Yeah.
Um, I gotta pee. I'm gonna pause this.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, we're back in here. So there's really two things that I want to call out about everything you just shared there. Um, Maybe three. One is that feeling that you mentioned that Josh had, where it's like he wants to be done, but you guys are up on this fucking mountain and there's no option other than to figure out how to keep going, and also realizing that like it's going to be multiple hours before you actually are able to stop. And that is the exact same feeling that I had when I'll get up to a future part of my race. But that is just such a unique way to struggle. Like most things, when you quit, like you can just stop instantly and be done. But in this experience, it's like, okay, well, like you are fighting this emotional feeling of wanting to quit and you've been out there for 20 hours and whatever else, but like you fucking can't. And what are you going to get helicoptered off the mountain? Like you got to keep going. Um, and just that like internal friction where you have no choice but to go, like that pressure point is I just think it's where a lot of the breakthroughs emerge, because how much different would the race, how much different would it be to reflect on the race if we were just able to be like, yep, drop of a hat, I want to stop and I get to finish immediately right now, I'm done. Like that's totally not the situation. um in my chat with Brandon yesterday, he shared something on him and Spina being together and where his mindset went. And I think this is just really valuable to hear and to share. He basically had, he described it as this little voice in his head that was starting to suggest quitting. And he said that it took hold because the other people around him were struggling too. And he said that he started to rationalize, if they give up, I can give up. And this voice in his head basically telling him, you can give in because they're going to give in. And I believe that nobody had actively spoken about finishing at 51.8, but they had all really decided on that. And just understanding, like, hey, this is really valuable experience. Like, where does the mind go in these situations? Like, so we can arm ourselves against that in the future. I thought that was extremely valuable. And I was really grateful that Brandon shared that. The last thing that I'll share is more of a tactical thing. And you had mentioned that you guys, attempted to run and you'd go for 10, 15 seconds. But beyond that point in the trail where I really described being able to see Libby when she's running, she runs down this descent, but then you kind of see it kind of wind up a little bit. Pretty much after that point, for what felt like then 3 more miles or so, it was all runnable and none of us ran it. And that seems to me like one of the things to really figure out on executing a good ultra and especially a good 100 miler is like some protocol where you're keeping yourself honest, even if it's running for 20 yards, like the straight up walk segment for 45 minutes, for an hour, for longer than that. It's like you're moving slower than you want to be, which is somehow actually fatiguing you more. And it's taking longer. So you're out there longer and your whole spirit is getting broken a bit. The other thing that I would say about this whole phase of the race is that this is where we have evolved through sunset into dusk into nighttime, which is 100% playing a huge part in just like our overall energy individually. So, anything else you want to share off that before I'll talk about us getting together?
No, those are all great. Those are all great points. Um, Even me, like that first point you made, like I don't go back out there, and it's a large part because I'm with three people who I know aren't going back out. So I don't have energy coming in to me that is helping me gain whatever strength or courage I might need to be able to go out.
Yeah.
So it really affects everybody up there. And I mentioned, I think it was on the ending of the last pod, but or in one of our talks, but it's like when we got to that top of that hill, I wanted nothing more than to hook up with Louis at the front and to feel like a conqueror. I
Yeah.
wanted to feel that like we're moving, we are doing this, we are not being like oppressed against by like the course and the nature and the clock. We're actually like fighting back and getting some W's here. And you feel that energy, that negative energy of we're the slowest link, we are struggling, we're hurting, we're holding people back, we're not going to finish the race. You feel that for 8, 9 hours, like it gets into your bones. And it's
Hmm.
difficult for you to get that out of you, no matter how good your body feels. The contagion of negative energy was the thing that I wanted to guard against the most. And I thought our team structure guarded us really well against. But I don't think we were expecting what happened when three people all feel bad and how exponentially powerful that is in creating just sort of a negative energy field for everybody. So I just want to highlight that first point a little bit, a little bit more. And when you move from light to dark, and it's literally you're in the dark and it's the night, that's where doubt comes. Like that's when you need everything. You need everything for those dark hours. And yeah, we just didn't have it.
Another thing I forgot to mention. So my guy, Matt, the Hulk, he said the nighttime is challenging. He's like, the lunar energy, he's like, it's a different kind of energy and it's harder to tap into, but it's a deep energy. That's what he said. And so as he's laying out this perspective, he's like, you can walk until sunrise and you'll be totally fine. You are in the night, which is challenging, but there is something here if you can tap into it. So that was part of my optimism. And then we have the situation where Libby and I start down the trail, and then we hear you guys. And so we then walk back up the trail. I actually just tell Libby, you just chill here and just sit for a few minutes. And I walk back up and basically, welcome you guys into the water buffalo. And it was no surprise to me, but I knew you guys were struggling for sure. Josh's energy was obviously very different than the top of Smith Mesa. I don't think Spina was saying anything, which is never a good sign. Brandon, I actually didn't necessarily see like the visible signs of despair from Brandon. So I was still kind of feeling like, okay. And at this point, like my mindset is still just 1,000% like get us to the crew aid. Like the crew aid is the next thing. I shared with you guys about the sweeper that I had seen, and we take a few minutes there to get water, and we then head down this flying monkey descent, which my understanding of it was that it's this tactical descent that goes pretty steep down, but then it's pretty flat and runnable. And so in my mind, I'm thinking that it's not going to be that long of a tactical descent. And that was essentially completely the opposite. We are now in a unit of 6 people, and it's completely dark, and we are on this tactical descent that is literally on the edge of the mountain, literally on the edge of the mountain. And so we're basically just like stepping, foot by foot down this really, really steep descent. And us moving as a unit is also adding significant time compared to any of us potentially doing this individually. And there were really a couple of points that stick out to me about this descent. One is pretty shortly after we start the descent, I get a call from my sister, and it's Louie using my sister's phone. And so Louis is at the 51.8 aid station, and he basically wants to hear, should we wait up for you guys or should we go? And I'm like, just go. And again, I'm still not viewing this as like a break point in the race. I'm just like, I know it's going to take us a while to get there. And like, I don't want to hold you guys up. Keep moving through the race. So I give Louis, the go ahead for, I think at that point it was just him and Trevor. Separately, Jamie had described it as he boogied down Flying Monkey and was able to run through the little dirt bike trails, BMX trails that led into the 51.8 aid station. And that to me is like such a clear indication of like just the difference in the effort, right? It's like the single person who's got a little bit of juice, able to scoot down it. Not an easy descent, but we almost made it more challenging being with the group, being broken down, going one by one. And so that call from Louis was the first thing. Jamie got into that aid station a few minutes behind Louis and Trevor, but then shortly caught up to them. As we are then moving down this, it's basically me and Libby in the front. Libby is actually ahead of me, but we're all like totally together. And there was one section of the trail where it was probably like an 8 foot, it was probably like 8 feet long. And it's like this gravel edge, I would almost call it.
Mm.
And it was probably 3 or 4 feet wide, 8 feet long, probably 3 or 4 feet wide. And you just look to the right and it's like, dude, that is down the mountain. Like, this is not a flat trail where it's just like, oh, this is the edge. It's like, no, like, this is literally, if you fall off this, you are going down the mountain. And Libby actually lost her footing a bit and then sprawled out onto all fours. And I was right behind her, but not exactly even in a position to like catch her so much. And we made sure that she got through. And, this was then the point where like it started the transition to like whenever we would get down a spot, Libby and I, then like I'd wait to sort of guide the rest of the team down because it was getting increasingly more tactical. The next big part was certainly the rope rappel. There was probably like I don't know, maybe it was an 8 foot slab of rock that was super steep. And again, related to the overall setup of this trail on the edge of the mountain, you couldn't really just like jump down it because all of a sudden your momentum could freaking carry you right off the mountain. And so they had this rope that you basically latched onto. And so I was basically went down to the bottom, and now all of a sudden, like everybody is passing me their poles as I'm like handing them the rope, and they're coming down backwards, and then I'm passing them their poles, and we're continuing on. And at this point, I know that you and Spina are bringing up the rear, and I can just tell that the challenge and the fatigue and the emotional state is really really it's really really in a place of despair. It's low. Josh's foot is killing him, like any type of step down, like I'm hearing him like grunt with every step, and I'm like, shit, like we're really really in a tough spot here. I'm still optimistic that we're going to soon get to the bottom of this descent, and then it's hopefully going to be pretty flat until we head into the aid station. um Once we get to this flatter section, I mean, I wouldn't exactly describe it as flat. I mean, we were down on the bottom of the mountain and we had reached like the floor, but it was this BMX trail where it's like constantly winding and bumping. If we were solo, right, or if we were feeling good, it is runnable. And I think that Jamie ran basically the whole thing. But as a unit, we were continuing this death march of a walk, I'd say, that really started back up even above that water buffalo. And eventually we see a light, and it's Charlie, who had run out onto the course to come see us. And he gave us a little bit of a vibe check. It was obviously great to see him. It like that means that we're generally getting close, but the whole same theme that had been recurring to this point played out true there. we were close, but not as close as we thought or wanted to be. And we saw the aid station way out in the distance, but we probably still had almost 2 miles from the time that we saw Charlie. Like Charlie was deep into the course. And so we're walking and um, we're still moving together as a unit. And at this point, it dawns on me, or I finally accept that there will at least be some athletes who end their journey here. And um, I'm walking with Josh, and I'm just I'm feeling the weight of how much everybody had worked to get there. And it's dawning on me that what I set out to do, getting every athlete across the finish line, like I'm accepting that I'm coming up short. And it's this incredible emotional challenge where it's like I'm balancing the fact that I'm accepting that I failed, but I'm not really feeling like I failed because I have visibly seen how hard everybody has worked all day long. Not only just up to Smith Mesa, but then this whole thing after Smith Mesa, which at the start of it, I thought we were getting the vibes back. And I thought that we were hitting some easy running descents. And it played out a lot differently. And this ultimately set up what was probably the most meaningful moment of the race for me. And this is where I come in to the aid station, and we had separated just by like, I'm probably 20 feet ahead of Josh. Josh is 20 feet ahead of Libby, something like that. Like we've made it to the aid station. We're not necessarily stride for stride. We're all kind of having our own individual moment as we walk into this spot that we know is going to be an inflection point. And Charlie had been walking alongside me, and he had the camera, and he was just basically asking me how I was feeling. And I was basically like, this is a hugely important aid station. I was like, we need a massively different plan. Like, we need a new strategy. I didn't really outwardly say for those who are willing to continue, but in my mind, I'm like, anybody that is willing to continue at this point, like, we need to commit to a very different strategy than what has just unfolded the last 4 hours. And I'm then walking into the aid station, and my sister walks up, and it seemed like just the energy and the vibe at the aid station, it just seemed like they all knew. They all knew what we had been battling out there. And my sister just opened her arms, and I just gave her a hug, and I just instantly sobbed into her shoulder, just like bawling my eyes out. And I didn't plan to. I didn't really know it was going to happen. It was just like this emotional release where I just like kept my arms wrapped around her and just like let out like these sighs of tears and emotional weight. And in my own experience, I feel like it was the first time all day that I had offloaded some of my emotional energy, or really what I had been like bearing, maybe offloaded the emotional load. And it was just like so real. It was so real, man. It was so real. And even though I was crying my eyes out and feeling slightly defeated, almost in awe over just what we were even doing, like I really, really loved just the depth of the experience. And even though I was sobbing my eyes out and like crying a heavier cry than I don't even know if I've ever cried that heavy, like sobbing into her arms, sobbing into her shoulder. It was just like almost this acceptance of like, this is how it's going. I wasn't trying to hide anything, and I wasn't trying to pump anybody up, and I wasn't trying to convince anybody that it was different than exactly what they were feeling and had been feeling for hours. And Cam was right there. Cam gave me a hug. Lath was right there, kept crying right into his shoulder. And I headed into the aid station then and started to just figure out what fuel I wanted to grab, how I could clean myself up a little bit, and allowed you guys to follow in, over the next minute or 2 minutes or 3 minutes or whatever it was as the team came into 51.8.
Yeah, it was the weight of the entire day seemed to come crashing down on that tent and on those lights, Virgin BMX 51.8. Um, I think what you experienced was very similar to what Josh experienced up on the top, where it's like you need to let it go. Like
Mm,
you've been holding on to everything and it needs to be released. Like that's how you find peace is by letting it go and accepting the truth, right? And the truth was people are stopping here and there's nothing I can say to make them go out. There's nothing anybody could have said to make those four people go back out. And there I was close to that, but mostly for me it was a time issue. So we get to the bottom of the Flying Monkey technical descent, and you, Brandon, Josh, and Libby move up ahead, and it's Dylan and I in the rear. And just to give you a little bit of a fun sense of that idea of how time is warped. So Charlie ran all the way up to the end of the technical descent, right? So he Charlie's just awesome. Charlie ran a half of a marathon on Saturday, just running up and down the course trying to capture us. And then he put in another 7 miles on Sunday. So Charlie ran 20 miles on this course, just videotaping people and photographing us. So he comes up to the base and it's Dylan and I, and we're like, "Oh, Charlie, it's great to see you. Like, how far to the aid station?" "Oh, about a mile or so. You guys are fine." And so we're walking, and it's this winding, everything is a turn, or it's an uphill, or it's a downhill. So there's nothing straight. Um, and we're like, we've been walking for quite a long time here. Like, we should be coming up to the aid station, no? And then all of a sudden we see Charlie's light coming back up towards us. And we're like, "Charlie, great to see you again. Like, how far?" "We've been walking for like 40 minutes. Like, how much farther to go?" "Oh, don't worry. It's about another mile or so. Don't worry about it." Oh, um, in this, and so for me, at least in this moment, like, I'm just reassuring. I'm also playing a little bit of a safety guy. Some of the steps are getting a little bit loose, and there's a couple of spots where literally Dylan is walking up and my arms are like this on the other side of him, where I'm just like, "Don't trip, don't stumble, don't fall." Because we're both going down if you do, because I'm going to reach out and I'm not strong enough to stop you. So we'll both go down the hills. Just trying to get him in. And I'm just saying, like, I don't care about the cutoff time. I don't care about the aid station. If you need to sit here on the side of the trail for the next hour before you get up again and move, we can do that. Like, I'm not here to rush you. I'm not here to put pressure on you. And I don't need you to do anything for me other than get to the aid station safely in whatever fashion you need to get it into. So we come in, I don't know how much later than you guys, but we don't come in at the same time as the four of you. We come in afterwards. And I think there's something like 15 minutes left to the cutoff when we get in. The cutoff's like 11:30 at night, and we get in, Dylan and I, kind of around quarter after 11. I remember Lath came up to us and was like, "Do you guys want broth?" And I said, "Oh my gosh, yes," because I'm cold. It's starting to get the chills from just being out there in the night. And Josh gave away his headlamp and I gave away my toque. And I was just like, oh, I should never. You don't ever give away your toque ever, ever, ever. That was a dumb move. I had my neck gaiter. I pulled it up over my head. I was doing anything I could to get warm. So I was really happy to get the broth. And those four people, there was nothing that you could say to get them to go back out. I was pretty much there. Um, and what's I think a really interesting way to describe that feeling that you mentioned, where it's like you realize that that we lost, but you don't. It's almost like you've won in that moment. It's kind of like you've drained your spirit, but then it's been filled back up automatically for you from the outside. It's this really strange experience, and that's kind of like how I was feeling because I had given up the idea of the race. I'd given all of my emotional and spiritual energy to the three guys up on that mesa to get them to the water buffalo, and then in order for me to be positive and encouraging, I had to release, I had to let go of my own expectations on the race. And so coming in 15 minutes to go to the cutoff, I'm just like totally convinced, like I'm not going back out there. Like it's dangerous. It's dark. It's a trail I don't know. Could fall off the side of the mountain. I don't have the willpower. I don't have the spirit to face that adversity. It's not a physical thing, right? It's not a physical thing. It's just when you don't have spirit, when you don't have will, you shouldn't go do something that's dangerous. And it was dangerous. Um, Up there in the dark. And I remember looking at you in that tent, and you're like, well, I got to go back. I'm going back out there. And initially, my heart sunk because, like, oh, I really wish you didn't say that, Ryan, because that means I potentially have to go back out, and I am not in a mind frame. Like, I'm not in a headspace to even position myself to think about going back out. But there was a sliver, and you turned to me, and you're like, "Are you coming out? Are you coming out with me?" And I said, I don't want to go back out there. Like I told you, I'm like, my spirit is 100% up there, so I got nothing, but you can't go alone. Like you're not able to go alone. I won't let you go alone. So if you need me to go with you, like I'm ready. I can go. I can summon the strength if you tell me that you need me, because that's in the same vein that I've been operating in for the last 4 hours. So that wouldn't have been that hard for me to get up and to go with you. But you told me I don't need you to come with me. I got Blaine. We'll be okay. And that was it for me. That was the permission I needed to just let it all go. And then I got into observing mode and prof mode and watching all of the emotion unfold in the tent, which was, I mean, it was the most amazing part of the race. It was the most beautiful part of the race. And I just remember personally just walking around in the moment, knowing how important that was and just being so in the present that I could see that this was the victory. And I was just walking around that site being like, this is the biggest win. I'm like, this is it. This is exactly what needed to happen. And this is better. Like this is better than going 10 for 10 in the moment, which I still find pretty incredible. But maybe I'll let you describe the tent scene and then we'll jump off there, because to me, that's the climax of the whole race and just where everything really shone through in terms of like the ideal of the team, the spirit of the team, the determination and the hard work of each individual on the team. It's like everything that we talk about that we want to realize in the team was like actualized in that moment. And it was more real than reality. It was like hyper reality. When you say things were so real, it was like beyond reality, how visceral and impactful and strong everything was. So I'll just let you sort of maybe talk about that tense scene there, because it was one of the most amazing things I've ever been a part of.
Yeah. So I had come in and started to just eat something or fill up my water or whatever. And then Josh came in, right behind me. And there was just an understanding. I think that I just said to him, like, we'll talk. Like, I was giving him time we just got to the aid station, right? Like, not necessarily that you need to go get shit, head back out, but like, we just got to the relief point that we've been working towards for hours. So, like, we're not in a rush here to figure this out. After that, Libby came in and the Grim Reaper was there, and my bib was underneath my jacket that I was wearing, and maybe Josh's wasn't visible because the Grim Reaper first noticed Libby's number, and he says whatever her number was, he goes, "You're on my list." And he's got a list there, and he says, "You've got 30 minutes to leave the aid station if you want to continue." And up until that point, I had no comprehension of time. I wasn't thinking at all about how much time we had left. Like that was not even remotely on my mind. And hearing that from the Grim Reaper, instantly I was like, okay, we just put in all this effort to get here. Like there is 0% chance that some of these people who I expect are going to be ending their journey here, this is just further validation that like that's okay. Like we are not continuing this for some folks in a rushed manner where we're fighting the clock and we're essentially halfway through the race here. We got 50 miles left, right? And so that really, I think, was also, you mentioned permission. I think that that was also like good permission for everybody. And my favorite part about that whole scene was that it was just understood that people were ending their journey there. There was no trying to convince people. There was none of that hyping people up. You can do it. It was no, man. I know how hard you just worked. I am so proud of you to get here. And even though we were finishing, it was like the work that we had put in was so undeniable that it couldn't feel like a failure in that moment. It could not feel like a failure in that moment. And I remember then sitting in the tent and I'm sitting, Josh is to my left. We're in this kind of corner seat. And it's just this continued realization for me that, you know, I came up short in what I set out to do, but I'm also like so proud. And tears are just continuing to stream down my face. Josh instantly is like, dude, I was looking for something to break me and I found it. And he was so kind to compliment me on the leadership that I had displayed throughout the race, um, which felt really significant for me. I really look up to Josh in a lot of ways, and for him and I to just share all the experiences that we did in this adventure, I wanted to make sure that the people didn't feel like I had let them down, and that wasn't really on my mind in any way, but him sharing that with me, really made me feel even more proud, I suppose, of the overall effort. Um, I gave Libby a hug. I gave Brandon a hug. I gave Spina a hug, and same deal. Everybody, we just knew, and it was accepted. And I didn't really have any thought on like, is everybody going to end? I just knew that some people would. And as soon as you had sat down, I know that you had shared that you had no spirit left. And like, there's nothing that I've ever resonated more with than that. I was like, dude, I feel that. And you said, I'll go back out if you want me to go back out. And, um, a big part of my mindset heading into that aid station, I mean, dude, I wanted to quit. I wanted to be done heading into 51.8. Like, even before Flying Monkey, the amount of effort that we had put out, the overall structure of me trying to lead the team, like I underestimated what that was going to take from me. And my mind started to think about what was left. And I started to think about, we're not even halfway. How am I possibly going to do this? And I started to think about the crew and the Pacers. And I was just like, dude, I don't want to let these people down. Like they haven't even gotten to pace yet. Like we're supposed to, in a sense, like start the race now. Like this is where Blaine comes in, and then we got Madison and Lath, and then we got Mike D. And I'm like battling this this really difficult internal conflict where I'm like, dude, I want to be done. I want to be finished, but I feel like there's people that are relying on me. And when we were in the tent, it just became very clear to me that my duty, my duty was to head back out. And I said I wanted to see if I can make some magic with the Pacers. And the only thing on my mind was go catch Louis. And I said, if I can just catch those guys, they can bring me home. I know that they can. And I threw my pack back on or started to load it back up. And getting back into my own athlete experience, this is where I made another very big tactical error is that I let my Ironman mindset of race, push, go, 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 I let that take over. And I let the idea of you have 30 minutes to leave the aid station, I let that drive me to leave as quickly as possible. And so I had my sister fill up my flask bottles, but my protocol all day was take your flask bottles, stand at the water buffalo, and slam a liter or more. I didn't do that. I tried to take down some coconut water. I drank maybe a third of it. Wasn't really going down in an easy way as I had hoped or expected. Started to eat a sourdough bagel. That was feeling dry. Think I nibbled on a couple pieces of fruit before I headed out, but I basically head out with Blaine, and our goal is get moving, get back to the pacing that I can do individually, and go catch those guys. And if I could go back and if I could do it differently, I would have allowed myself to chill there for the entire 30 minutes. Because at this point, it was now getting close to like 15, right? It was 30 when we got in. We'd had this whole scene with the team. I had been nibbling on some stuff, and I I just didn't take in nearly enough. And so what I would have done is just fuel up. I would have tried to take in 2,000 calories or something like that. And so anyway, we head out, and I'm basically telling Blaine. Blaine's like kind of asking, he's like, okay, so what's been going down? I'm like giving him the quick rundown. I'm like, here's the pacing that we need. I can be running 14s, I can be walking 18s, we'll be totally good. We hit this flat stretch coming out of the aid station, and it's probably a mile and a half of flat stretch. We hit this creek crossing that we were all concerned about, right? We were prepping all about this creek crossing. What do we do? Do we change our shoes before? Do we change our shoes after? It was literally no big deal. We crossed it on a couple of rocks. Boom, we're off and running. And the continued theme of me not knowing the course well enough continues to play out. And so we end up hitting this mountain nub, and it wasn't really like any other climb in the day, right? It wasn't like straight up for 2,000 feet, but it was the side of this mountain, and we're in the dark. I don't really know where we're going. I had texted with Trevor a little bit to let them know I'm heading out and I'm coming to get you guys. And they're like, okay, you hit this little mountain thing, then you hit this fire road. And they were thinking that this fire road is this turnaround point. So in my mind, I'm like, I just have a little bit to go to get them. And all of a sudden, I'm going up this mountain nub. And this is the second time that my heart rate goes up to my threshold. And again, that's just like a massive tactical error. Should have capped it, well under that, well under that. And I recover a little bit. Instantly, though, I am realizing that my two flasks, I had my sister put element in both of them, and I wanted plain water. So instantly, within the first couple of miles, I'm having to drink from Blaine's reservoir. I'm like, dude, I need plain water. Do you have plain water? So he's hooking me up with that. We get over this mountain nub, and we start heading up this fire road, and the guys that are up in front, they don't actually know the course really either. So they think that this fire road is going to be like a turnaround point, and that's what I think too. And so now we're getting into probably mile 54, 55, something like that. We're going up this long fire road, and I'm actually managing my effort really, really well. I did blast my effort coming up the mountain nub. I didn't have enough fuel resources to actually sustain that or even handle that, but I was able to recalibrate a little bit. And we're going up this fire road, and it's kind of like rolling ascent. It's this wide gravel road and it's not straight up. So I am able to get a little bit of relief on the walking sections. I'm checking my heart rate often. I'm telling Blaine, like, all right, I got to relax a little bit. I got to bring my heart rate down. But I'm generally doing pretty well, mainly because I still have this optimism of I just want to see three headlights. I'm like, I want to see three headlights. It's going to be Louie. It's going to be Jamie. It's going to be Trevor. We're going to recalibrate here. They're going to tell me that I just have a little bit more to go, and then I'll be able to come catch them again. And every time I see one headlight, two headlights, I'm like, where's the third? Where's the third? Come on. And there is this almost like a mini water stop. It wasn't a full aid station. About halfway up, it was like a folding table with a cooler and a bunch of waters. So that was a good opportunity for me to get some more water in. But again, it just wasn't going down. Like I'm expecting to be able to slam a liter of water. And it's like I get a third of a water bottle down and I'm like kind of struggling to get more. So I'm like, this is not what I want. And again, at this point now, it's like, 1 in the morning, pitch dark, of course. And we continue up this fire road and we eventually get to this guacamole aid station that's at the top of the fire road. And I'm pumped to hit the aid station, but at this point, Trevor had texted me, hey, there's a lollipop loop up here that we didn't know about. So we're going out in the lollipop loop. And I'm at this aid station and I'm still of this mindset of catch them, catch them, catch them. And I pull up to the aid station and two relatively significant things go down just related to my mindset. One is that I see cup noodles and I haven't had cup noodles all day. And I'm like, great. I need some fuel variety. I need some broth, right? Hopefully this will help give me a little bit more energy. And I go and I fill up the cup noodles with the hot water tap that they've got. And I like, am not even really thinking, I'm expecting to just be able to slam it. And the crew volunteer is like, oh, well, you need to wait like 3 or 5 minutes for it to cook. And in my mind, I'm like, I don't have 3 minutes, which again is just like this urgency that is setting me up to fail. And again, I could have chilled there for 20 minutes. I could have had 5 cup noodles and I would have been okay and better set up for success to head out into this lollipop loop. But in my mind, I'm like, I don't have 3 minutes. And I'm trying to get creative with my fuel. I'm starting to eat more of the aid station fuel. I'm eating some quesadillas. But in my mind, I'm like, I need to have like freaking 10 of these quesadilla slices to get any significant amount of calories in. Like these are these super thin, it's a tortilla with a bit of cheese, and I'm eating a wedge of it. And I'm like, I get half of this thing in. And again, it's like, there's no like savoriness to it that's like letting it slide down my throat. Like everything that I'm eating is feeling dry. And the other thing that I see at this aid station is there are two crew volunteers who are manning the food station, and one of them asks the other, what's going on with that guy in the corner? And the other volunteer says, oh, he wanted to DNF, but I told him to just hang out for a little while and see how he feels. And I look over, and this dude looks like death. Looks like death. He is in one of those like my family used to bring these kind of like foldable chairs to like our little league games, the ones that like collapse into themselves and they got like the canvas seat. This dude's sitting in this seat and he is just completely hunched over in his own lap. He's got a space blanket on him. And I don't really consciously think this, but in my mind, I'm like, he looks how I feel and he doesn't look good. And so I kind of have this whole thing go down. I hit the bathroom and we head out onto this loop. I will say the other really significant part of this is that coming up that fire road, we were seeing a lot of athletes coming down, right? So I'm not like that far behind in the race. And every athlete that we pass, they say it is nearly impossible to navigate this loop. You need to pull up the GPS map file. Like it's really hard to see the ribbons. It's pitch dark, right? It's not very well marked. There's people going the wrong way. You got to get the map. And the other just incredible layer to all this is that this is literally Blaine's first ever trail run. He'd been on like, I think a casual hike or two before, but like he's from Florida and he has never been on trails like this. He's never hiked with a pack. He's never used poles and he is dominating. He's got the headlamp on. I'm like giving him some guidance on like, here's how you want to use your poles. Here's how we can manage our effort. Here's like what I'm doing to keep this whole thing in check. Like, this is what you want to be thinking about. And he's just like locked in. He's so receptive. He's so coachable, right? For these final couple of hours where I'm the one doing the coaching until it flips around. And I had asked him to pray for me when we started, and he prayed for me out loud, which was very important to me because I knew I knew heading out into the night, heading out at 51.8, like I knew that I was going to need something greater than me to be able to carry me on in this. So before I get into the loop and go for like a 20-minute monologue here, is there anything that you want to to add or ask a question on or tee me up to share?
And no, it's just this is such a great part of the story, and you're experiencing the things that I knew were out there for me, which I know that I didn't need to experience because I've already gone through a whole bunch of those things personally when it comes to like the physical and spiritual breaking points meeting together on a long effort where you're just not willing. Like I've been in a spot on some of my own ludicrous goals that I put out for myself where literally you fall down on the trail and you realize what it feels like to lose the will, not only to keep going, but the will to live. I've literally been in the spot where it's like if some wild animal came up and started nibbling on my leg, I would just let it. And there was one point, and these are what I'm talking about is I have a goal of running a full marathon in the trails with 2,000 to 3,000 feet elevation without drinking water or taking food on the entire run. And while doing that already in a fasted state. So one of these times it's like mile 24 and I'm on the road and I fall down on the road and there's a truck coming up and it's like I don't even care to get up and move out of the way of the darn truck that's coming towards me. I could just sit and let it run over me, and that seemed like an acceptable position at that point in time. Like so you can really get yourself to these nasty places when the physical ruin and the spiritual like just like the draining of everything they meet together. So I knew it was up there for me, and I'd playing in my mind like I haven't fueled for 4 hours, I haven't hydrated for 4 hours, I'm at a gigantic deficit, and we're going out into the dark, and the only thing that's out there for me is a fall off of the exponential curve. Like the only thing up there for me is this, and that doesn't do anybody any good except for this like in my personal circumstance it's like now it's a glory story of me going out and like brutalizing myself in order to what show that I'm tough or I can eat pain. Like those are vainglorious and superficial and ultimately egotistical things that you want to show to other people in those moments, right? Um, so I know what was up there and it's not anything that's valuable for me, but you need to go up there. It's like just obvious. You need to go out. You're the leader. You have to go by example, which is why I was willing to go with you, but not willing to do anything other than that in those moments. And you know, we're all trying to get you ready to go for the run out there. And the thing that I'm just yelling at you as you're leaving the trail, be safe, be safe, be safe, be safe, be safe. Because that's the only thing that matters. Guys, I know you're not coming back to hit the cutoff unless by miracle chance you do meet up with them. It's like a Hail Mary. This is like we need to throw the like football. It's like we're on the whatever, our 5 yard line, and we got this is the last play of the game, and we need to hit the 60-yard Hail Mary, and then the guy's got to catch it, and then he's got to run the 45 whatever yards to get in the end zone, and that might just tie the game to get us in overtime. That's where you were. It was like we got a less than 1% chance of making this thing happen, but I'm going back out there to see if I can make it. And there's no chance any of us are going to stop you. But like it was be safe, be safe. So I knew what was going on. Um, and at that point, for us in the camp, it was like, all right, like let's kick into support. I didn't have any idea what we were going to be doing. And Dylan had obviously been thinking about this for a while. He's like, well, we're not leaving. Like, we're staying at the race. We're going to make sure that we're here when Louis and Jamie and Trevor come in, and we're going to be here for Ryan. Like, you didn't have an expectation that we were staying. I had no idea. But that was a really cool wrinkle in the race experience. That aid station's about 10-minute drive from our house, from the team house. So Brandon, Josh, Libby, they hitch rides right back to the house. They shower, they order pizza. They're kind of like they're ready to turn in. Dylan and I, we've got to go back and get his rental car at the parking lot at the start finish, which is like a 25-minute drive. So we don't get back to the house until maybe like an hour after them. We hit the shower, both of us, brew up a pot of coffee, chug the pot of coffee. Josh and Libby, they're like, Josh's foot is like exploded. So it's like he's not coming out. Libby has just been in it and she has nothing left. We're looking at her face. She's like, I was in my bed and I heard people talking, so I felt like I should come out. And it was like, no, go back to bed, please. Like, please go back to bed. You've earned it. You deserve it. And Brandon, who's been in it for a long time too, he's like, you guys going back out? Make sure you get me. It's like I might close my eyes on the couch, but make sure you come and get me. And I actually forgot about that. I'm like, no, we should let Brandon sleep. And Dylan's like, dude, he's sleeping on the couch right in front of the front door. I think he wants us to go get him. Right. So we shake Brandon up, and the three of us, we head back out to 51.8 aid station, which is also the mile 70 aid station. We get back there at 2:30 in the morning or something. And I just remember it's like the first thing I see is Mike Donatelli with his running poles and his sweats, and he's just waiting. He's like, I'm waiting for them to come back, and the race is still on. And that was my whatever, the 25th wind of the day or something. It was awesome to get back into camp and to feel into the race again, and then to kick into support. So that's kind of like what's going on from our vantage point. And then we are just keeping the crew vibes high, the pacer vibes high, trying to stay awake and starting to stay warm, but just waiting for everyone to come in and to get into this support part of the mission for us.
Yeah, beautiful. And I guess more detail on what was needed when I left the 51.8 aid station is that was basically its own big lollipop loop. And it was an 18-mile loop, and I had until 6:30 in the morning to get back there. So that was the mission of I'm not just like leaving to continue the race. It's like, okay, I'm leaving the aid station and I need to conquer these 18 miles in 7 hours, right? It was about 11:30. I had until 6:30. And another like just generally tactical error on my part is I instead of just thinking, okay, how can I like effectively go for 7 hours? I was like, how fast can I do 18 miles? And I'm like, oh, I could probably do 18 miles in like 5 hours. And that again just like led into that mindset of urgency, which ultimately I just didn't have I didn't have the energy to sustain. So we get up to that guacamole aid station. I have that situation with getting a little bit of fuel, but really not much. Blaine works with the crew there and he gets the GPS file downloaded. And we head out onto this lollipop loop, which is back to the top center of a mesa, which is similar to around mile 14, right? From the first part of the podcast, where there are these boulder fields and you're kind of running, but you're kind of running around them and then you're running over them. And at this point, I will say that one thing that always adds a little bit of zest in a race like this is like when there's a change of environment. So went over the mountain nub, right? Get to the fire road, go from the fire road to the aid station. Even though I'm not really doing this super effectively, it's aid station now into Lollipop Loop. And so it's like, okay, there's things changing. We are progressing through this thing. And um, we start making our way into this lollipop. Blaine is navigating it literally flawlessly, literally flawlessly. These ribbons are so freaking far apart and so non-reflective in the night that I am understanding why everybody was warning us on our way up. But Blaine's got the map on his phone, and we are navigating this thing as if the sun was out. And at this point, it's a completely full night sky. You can see a million stars. There is an absolutely beautiful crescent moon that is glowing. It's like this, it's like this deep, deep yellow gold. And I'm like, this is just an incredible experience. And the vibes are still decently high coming out of the aid station. But shortly after that, the energy dips a little bit for me. And at this point, I start um actively praying out loud. I'm asking God, God, please give me strength, please give me courage. I'm continually repeating affirmations of, I believe I can do this. I can do this. Please, God, give me strength. Please, God, give me courage. I can do this. I believe I can do this. Different variations of that. So I go from praying and asking for strength and courage to thanking God for strength and courage and trying to like flip it around in my mindset to feel like I've already got it. Continually, I believe I can do this. I believe I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. I start playing a little bit of music on my phone to try to get a little bit of vibes up. And I'm starting to realize that none of it's working. I'm starting to realize that no matter how many times I say, I believe I can do this, it's just not changing anything about this emotional and energetic hole that I am in. And it's really strange because I don't have any single part of my body that's specifically hurting. It's not like my ankle hurts, my knee hurts, my hip hurts. Like overall, my body feels pretty good, other than the fact that I have no energy. And you mentioned not having fuel for the previous 4 hours, getting into 51.8. I had to have had less than 150 calories an hour for the previous 8 hours. And that was a combination of not being resourceful enough at aid stations and not being creative enough with what I would try to take in. Um, Not having enough fuel on me for what I could troubleshoot with. Like if I could have had a bunch more bars on me, I was able to get some Cliff Bars down, but everything was feeling just dry. And then even I got into the 51.8 aid station and those sourdough bagels just felt dry. Those quesadillas just felt dry. And I'm realizing that the energy that I left 51.8 with and the confidence that I felt coming up the fire road and the excitement that I felt hitting the new section of the course with the lollipop loop, it's all really fading. And I had continued to text with Trevor and get some loose updates, but at this point, I've now been back in the race for 3 or 4 hours and I haven't caught them. And it's becoming more and more clear that it doesn't look like I'm catching them. And I start to get this feeling that I've just fulfilled the mission. And I feel really proud that I was with the crew at 51.8. I felt very proud of all of them for getting there. I thought that it was really important that I was with them when they finished. I thought it was really, really important that they all knew that I thought it was okay, right? They didn't need my blessing, but, as the coach, as the leader, as the person bringing them all into this, I thought that was really significant. I had crossed the 100K mark, which was the previous longest distance I'd ever run. And that felt significant. That's the last real big checkpoint before 100 miles. And I start to think that this race isn't so much about me running 100 miles. And even though this whole thing has gone down way differently than expected, I still feel like I did my job. And I feel like I did what I was meant to do out here. And so I start to have these thoughts of how am I going to tell Blaine? How am I going to tell Blaine? Because I know he's not going to be down for this plan of me ending my race early. And I really start to commit to the idea of ending at mile 65, which is back at the Guacamole aid station, 5 miles from the 70 aid station, which is where our crew spot is. Now, I mentioned the idea with Josh, right, back on the mountain, where it's like you want to be done and you want to quit, but you have no option other than to get yourself back to where there's any form of support. And I was feeling that massively. We had thought that this lollipop loop was 6 miles. Again, in my head, I'm like 6 miles, 2 hours, we'll get it done. Hopefully, I'll be seeing the other three guys by then. In reality, it was 6.8 miles, which doesn't really sound crazy significant, but all of a sudden, when your miles are a lot slower and it's a little bit longer, instead of it being 2 hours, it's 3 hours. And so I'm out there and I'm like, dude, I just want to be done, but I'm still 3 miles from the 65 aid station. Like that's at least another hour of this. And I tell Blaine that I feel satisfied with my effort, and I think that 65 is going to be the end for me. And he basically just lets me sit with it for a little while. He doesn't immediately dispel it, and he doesn't immediately try to shift up what I'm thinking, but he almost doesn't entertain it for a little while. And I'm like, fuck, dude, I need to be done. I need to be done, but I know that Blaine's not going to be down with this. I end up FaceTiming Chels from the top of this mesa, and I'm just bawling my eyes out. I'm bawling my eyes out, and I'm telling her everything that I basically just shared here. I felt satisfied, I felt proud, and I felt like I was ready to be done. But there was also this part of me that knew that finishing at 65 is quitting. And 70 is where the crew aid is. And I had no understanding or expectation of who would really be there. But I knew that at least probably my sister and probably Charlie would be there. But I'm like, dude, I don't know how I can bring myself to go for another 5 miles, which is going to be like another 2+ hours. And I'm continuing to feel this whole thing out with Blaine. And Blaine says probably the most important thing to me that I had heard all day, which is, dude, let's just get to the aid station and you can take 15 or 20 minutes and relax. And I had not heard that all day long. I had not had that perspective all day long. And hearing that 1000% shifted the way that I was viewing any future effort and any continued effort. And so I accept that I'm down to give that a shot. The final 3 miles on this lollipop loop are just an incredible grind. I am going back and forth between sitting and resting for a few minutes. There are multiple points where I just wrap Blaine up into a hug and just bawl on his shoulder. And I'm like just amazed at this state of emotional and spiritual fatigue. And again, like nothing in my body is specifically hurting. It's just like, dude, I have expended every resource that I have ever figured out how to tap into. And so we keep moving. We get into 65, and I still massively want to end my race there. There's two crew members that are still working as volunteers, but the truck is there packing up the aid station. And I think that I'm the last person on the course. There may have been one person behind me. I'm not really sure. But I sit down and honestly, I sit in one of those chairs that that dude was looking like death in. And just to my right, there's a freaking cot with a sleeping bag. And in my mind, I'm like, dude, all I want to do is lay down in this freaking sleeping bag. And the crew volunteer is just so helpful. He gets me all the fuel that I need. He fills up my waters. He gets me a bunch of quesadillas. He offered me pancakes. I should have taken pancakes, didn't. And I even ask, I'm like, what does it look like if I DNF here? And the guy says, oh, well, it's no problem. We got drivers. Somebody can just come pick you up. And I'm like, okay, give me a minute. And this is really like the break point, right? Where Blaine is sitting to my left, the cot is to my right. Out in front of me is this massive truck that they're loading all of the aid station stuff onto, breaking the thing down. I know that I can come get picked up. It's 4 in the morning. I've been out there for about 24 hours. But I also know that finishing there and getting driven back, like I know that that's quitting. And after all of the nudges of belief and nudges of encouragement from Blaine, after the idea of chilling at the aid station, I decide that I can make it to 70. And time, it's funny because I have this sense of urgency, like that I've mentioned throughout my race, especially since I left 51.8. But I'm not really thinking of it in the sense of like I need to get back there by a certain time. It's just like this energy of go, 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 go. And I'm never really thinking, oh, how much time do I have to get back there? It's not really where my mind's at all. And we head back down this fire road. We're actually able to put out some good little stretches of running. My headlamp dies. I have backup batteries in my pack, but I just don't care at all. I don't care at all. I'm like, Blaine's got his light. That's enough for me. I'm like running. I'm starting to close my eyes a little bit, and I'm like starting to fade into this realm of kind of sleeping, kind of starting to hallucinate a little bit. I remember Goldstein saying, be safe. I'm like, fuck, it didn't even cross my mind. I thought I'd be fine. But now all of a sudden, like, am I not safe out here? Like, I've been running for a mile and a half, 2 miles. I still have 3 miles to go. Um, I've had to hit the bathroom a couple of times. And we basically just keep putting in work, just keep putting one foot in front of the other. I'm pretty decent about putting in some run segments, you know, even if they're just 20 seconds, 30 seconds. We make it back to the backside of that mountain nub that kind of blasted me on the way up. At this point, we're reaching daybreak. So even though I don't have a headlamp on with any kind of light, I can see enough in front of my feet. It's not pitch dark anymore. And we come over this mountain nub crest and we're coming through the descent of it. And as we reach the bottom, I see Madison and Cam and Charlie. And they had run out onto the course to come support me and come retrieve me. And really similarly to the vibe at 51.8, where it was just understood I felt that same thing. And my sister, she's got a smile on her face. I smile when I see her. She gives me a huge hug. And it's just so different than the hug that I had given her 8 hours before, right? Where I'm sobbing into her arms. This time, it's much more of the sense that my head is held high and they know that I guess I'm not going to make the time cutoff. I had decided that 70 was going to be the end for me, regardless of the time. I think it was actually for the best that I didn't make the time cutoff because I don't know. Um, I don't know how positive the experience would have been if I came into the aid station and, you know, people are trying to will me on. And who knows? Maybe I do go, and maybe I'm able to take in some fuel that can keep me going. But in terms of my Zion 100 experience and the whole team element and me live coaching and me going back out there, like I felt extremely satisfied with finishing at 70. And we walked back probably the mile and a half or so that they came out onto the course. And I then see Mike Donatelli and Lath, who had run maybe a half mile into the course. At this point now, like the sun hasn't risen, but we've got like this really light daybreak going on. And I'm coming through some of the parking area, right, where I can see cars, I can see the tent of the aid station, and I see you. And I'm like, what? The guys are here? I see your beard and your hair. I'm like, no doubt that's Goldstein. You in your blue
Well,
jacket.
one of a kind.
And I see Brandon and Spina standing just behind you, basically. And I continue just trotting in and have my head held high. I give you a big hug. I give both those guys a big hug. You guys have a chair waiting for me right next to the fire pit. I plop down. Everybody knows that, this is my finishing moment, really. And I just have a huge smile on my face. And I'm just really, really proud of how the whole team did. And it was very special to know that there were still three guys out there moving closer to the finish line. But all of my thoughts were really just around the unit that was with me and feeling like, everybody is finishing this with much less mileage than they expected. But like, look at the camaraderie here and look at this shared experience and look at like the memories that we're making, man. Like, I just ran for damn near 26 hours and I got my team here and their tipping point was however long ago and they found it within themselves to stay out here for me. Like, I had zero expectation of that. I wasn't even thinking about that at all. And all you guys were like, of course. I'm like, I don't know, man. I guess it still amazes me that like this is what we have on the team. And I remember saving my watch activity. I was pumped to get the little alert. New longest run. My watch had said 72 miles. I'm like, I feel fucking accomplished, man. I feel accomplished. My sister had a full sheet of sourdough chocolate chip banana bread. And big learning lesson for me. I was able to suck down about 6 pieces of that in just a few minutes. And all that stuff I was saying on the fuel in the race not working and feeling dry. I'm like, maybe I needed some sweets and some savory desserts in my protocol because that went down easy. And yeah, man, we basically just soaked it up there. We just soaked it up. It was cool. There was a big, I don't know, U-Haul type truck. They were loading all the aid station stuff into, breaking it down. There were still a couple of crew members there, but I don't know. I was 20 or 30 minutes beyond the time cutoff, or maybe beyond when that dude would have let me keep going. It's probably 7:15 a.m., something like that.
Yep.
And yeah, it was just really special, dude. It was really, really special to have put out that kind of effort and to have come up short, but to still just feel so proud and accomplished.
Yeah. Couple things that like just stick out to me about your story up on top of the mesa there in the dark, you know, being put into states you don't want to be in to make decisions you don't want to have to make. Like, how many of those did you have to make between that coming into that mile 51.88 station and up on that, getting up to 65 and then coming down? How many of those were you confronted with in those moments? Like, again, it's like more than probably the previous race combined, like the previous 51 miles, like combined, right? Um, so it's really important for people to appreciate those moments in the present of kind of like what you're having to experience. And this is just the exponential nature of a race like this, where it's like all of a sudden the things you weren't thinking about become the most important variables in your ability to keep moving down and through the race. And because you had spent so much time giving yourself away to your team members, it's like you don't realize what that deficit is until you're falling off the cliff, unfortunately for you. And that's a bit of the like that's the I knew that was what was going to happen to you, but I'm not about to sit there at mile 52 and say, hey, Ryan, don't go back out there because this and this. Because number one, I can be wrong, obviously, and things could be totally different. But then, like, who am I to take away the breakthroughs that you need to go and get them in the state that you don't want to be in, right? And I just think when you went back out there, it was so courageous, and it was exactly the kind of leadership that makes people want to stick around a campfire for the next 7 hours to make sure you come in and that you know that you're supported. And you know, like that was really it. And 70 was so cool, man, when you came in, because there was not 1 ounce of negative energy. It was a true triumph. It was a celebration. And there was like nobody thought anything other than what an absolute like champion coming in under his own, because phew, what that 7 hours was not a regular, that's not a regular effort in any way, shape, or form. And what you have needed to go through and then to bring yourself to, and then what Blaine was able to accomplish, Hero Blaine, like legend within the tribe, like immediate legendary performance. Good luck anybody trying to top that one anytime soon. We're gonna obviously try because that's what we do on the team, but just amazing. And just in the camp, I'll give you just a quick little rundown of what we experienced. So we're waiting around the fire. I think it's somewhere around like 5 or 5:30. Jamie, Louie, and Trevor come in. Enthusiasm, positive energy, smiles on all the guys. Trevor's got these gnarly blisters, so he goes right into the tent. And your sister starts patching up the bottom of his feet. Jamie goes right to Dylan. You know, he's still having trouble stomaching things, like drinking water, getting things down. So he goes right to Dylan's, like, hey, dude, like, help me out. What do I need? Dylan's like, drink this cup of noodles. We'll refill your water. We're talking with Louie about strategy. Okay, how you feeling? What do you guys need? Um, and the big question mark right then was like, what are we doing with the Pacers? Because
Hmm.
you're still out there. Mike is kind of like your pacer, and we kind of want to send him off with Louis because we're like, Mike, you can handle 30 out. You can handle 30 miles with these guys. Can you go with them? There's this giant ascent, right? Way back up at mile 74. It's like that straight up 1,500 plus feet in a mile, like just gnarly. But you know, Louis and Jamie and Trevor, they've got a good vibe going. They're in they're sort of like their power trio. And they're like, Louis like, no, if Ryan somehow makes it back and is able to get back out, he's gonna need Mike. So we're keeping Mike in the stable for Ryan. And we're going off without a pacer, the three of us, till mile 80. And then if Ryan doesn't end up needing Mike, he can come and meet us at mile 80 and we'll pick him up then and he can come pace us for the final 20. So, there's no rushing. I'll never forget Jamie busting out a dance move to Stevie Wonder Superstition right by the fire. And it's just like, this guy's hurting. He could barely drink water, but he could summon the strength and the positive energy to like really get funky with it. Which is just a great lasting memory, and shout out to Jamie for just being awesome. But that idea of being positive, enthusiastic, even Trevor sitting in the tent, literally getting this this huge blisters on the bottom of his feet. He's smiling and laughing and just like, oh yeah, whatever. Like we'll just keep going. So their energy was great. They weren't expecting us to be there, so I think we boosted them up as well. Sent them off in the dark, and then we are just waiting for you. And this is like the knife is just twisting in all of our stomachs as 6:30 is coming close and 6:30 passes. And we'd been talking with the Grim Reaper, who's actually the owner of Vacation Races, is the company that put on this race. And he's pulling for you, dude. As I mentioned, like we're sitting at the gate and we're just like watching and waiting and hoping. And it's 20 minutes past the cutoff. And he says, like, sorry, man, I just don't think your guy's going to be able to come in and do it. And he finally crosses your name off. But it wasn't like this. He didn't come up at like 6:30:001. He's like, your guy, he's a loser. Ah, right. It's not this asshole Grim Reaper energy. He's like honestly pulling for you to come in because we've been around. And at this point, there's like a crew of 9 people basically, all just waiting for you to get in. And so I think he's rooting for you too. He's like, I feel like if Ryan comes in and he's just like, you know what, dude, take your time. I'm not going to kick you out of the race. Like, go out there, see if you can catch your guys, see if you can get it. Um, which I thought was really cool and a really nice show on his part. But yeah, we're waiting. It's 7 o'clock, 10 after 7. So now we're 40 minutes past the cutoff. And Cam, who's just like been waiting all day, like, cause he took himself out of the race before, and like the hero move, power move Cam. And he's just been at every single aid station, pumping everybody up. He's got his running shoes on. He's ready to pace, even though like he's like, I really don't want to have to run, but it's like I want to be ready in case somebody needs me, and I want to show that I'm here supporting the team. And he's just at the gate, and him and Dylan are standing there, and a bunch of us are kind of by the fire. We're trying to figure out what we're gonna do. And he runs. He just starts running. He's gone. He's bolting. And we start yelling, Cam, Cam. And Dylan turns around with this scowl on his face. He's like, no, let him go. He didn't get to race. This is his moment. He wants to go and get Ryan. You don't bring him back. And we're like, yeah, we know. We're not trying to get him to stop. Maddie wants to go with him. Can he stop for 5 seconds so Maddie can catch up to him? And Charlie can go too. So it's like, we understand people just got to get the heck out of there. We're sick of waiting. We are bringing you back. And so Cam, Maddie is like bolting. She's hitting like 5-minute mile pace. Like Charlie's running with the equipment. Cam has this like lung-ish, like he's got the flu. So he's starting to like wheeze, and like he can't really keep up. And it's painful, and he's like, oh gosh, I'm so glad I never had to pace. Like this is the exact proof I needed that I should never have been in the race. So good on you, Cam. And they just race up and meet you, right? And we just wanted you back, we wanted you safe, and we just wanted to celebrate with you because it was amazing to watch you go out, and it was incredible to come and watch you get back in. We're sharing like all the smiles. Charlie got great photos of what it was like. Everyone is smiling. It's just contentment, satisfaction. The pain is finally over. And we know that you're okay. And then it's like Mike D, Lynn, Dylan, myself, and Charlie. We're like, all right, we got some guys to go pick up at mile 80. Let's get in the car and let's get over to that, because this was about the start, right around the start finish line was where mile 80 was, and it was crew access only. So we get in the car, we drive back, we try to pick them up at mile 80, so that we can drop off Mike and give them like the most positive pacer in existence for the final 20 miles. We see them coming up the hill that we ran down in the early morning. Lots of smiles, but like
the big descent that we went into from Gooseberry into the canyon floor, that's the one that they came up, or what?
Yeah, the road we ran down at the very beach. So you come out of the start finish and you just turn a little bit and then you go
Oh,
down the
yeah, yeah,
road.
yeah. Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
they're coming up that road because they did the ascent up Gooseberry and then
They
they
came up that
followed the
already at 74 or whatever it was.
yeah. So they're coming up the road at mile 80. And Dylan is off to the side. His legs are real beat up. He's sore. He's like, I'm just gonna wait up at the top here. I'm not walking down the hill. I'm like just antsy. I'm just someone even mentions like, dude, you should take like Charlie's pacer bib and go on the 20 miles with the guys because it's like you're just so antsy and jazzed up. It's like, man, that's a great idea. I just don't have anything here. Otherwise, I probably would have re-entered the race as a pacer just to give support and to get out some of the energy, the physical energy that's still in my legs because I'm bouncing up all over and down this course trying to get with these guys and support them. So we see them at mile 80. They're still good vibes, but it's clear like it's a grind. It's good to
Yep.
be able to give them it's good to be able to give them Mike. I think it's the only time I've ever seen Trevor without a smile. Was when he's sort of just coming up and he's like, oh, we're grinding here. Um, we don't give them any food or fuel or anything because there's an aid station just like a mile down the road. So we give them our some hugs, some encouragement. We send them off with Mike, their smiles, and then it's like, well, what the heck do we do now? Because there's nothing really for us to do. We just got to kind of wait. We game plan. We think they're probably going to be coming in around 2:30, 3:30, 4 o'clock. We left them at 20 to 9, 8:40 in the morning. So now it's like, well, we got 6 hours till we got to get back. Um, so Dylan and Brandon and I, we've been up. We haven't really eaten anything. So the three of us, we go to a diner. We get some breakfast, which just hit the spot after, oh my gosh, that endless cup of coffee and the greasy food was just exactly what we needed. It's like, when you want to go and if you've been partying all night and you've pulled your all-nighter and you just want something, anything to fill your belly at 6 in the morning. That's kind of like how we felt after coming back out and crewing for people. We went back to the house. We saw everybody like the game plan is like we're all going back to the race 2 o'clock. Dylan and Charlie and I, we just can't wait around. We go a little bit earlier. And Charlie and I walk down the road where we know they're coming up. And I'm thinking, like, this guy, man, this is some monster hill these guys got to come up at mile 99. This is not cool. Like they're gonna feel pretty bad. So it's nice that we can at least like be at the top. And we got our flags. Like we walked into the house on the Wednesday and the Thursday, and you gift us these awesome flags, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so we're talking about, oh, well, what are we gonna be doing? Are we gonna be like hoisting the flag? We're all going to be raising our flags. And Jamie's like, yeah, I'm going to be tying my flag to my hiking poles and I'm going to be flying this thing when I'm coming up. So for me, it's like, all right, I know what I got to do. Like, so I got my flag. I'm putting it in. It's in my pocket. And Charlie and I are waiting to get the shots at mile, whatever, 99 and a half. Everybody else on the team is back at the start finish because they were like, I'm not going down the hill because I don't want to have to run up and then get back. I want to see them cross the finish line. And I'm just thinking, that's not going to be a problem for this guy. Like, I'm going to be able to sprint to that line, no problem, which I ended up doing. But it was so cool because everybody's coming up and we are just like, Charlie and I, you look great. Way to go. Unbelievable job. Finishes just over there. Like, for real, we're not joking with you. Like, you are really close. So we're pumping them up. They're seeing our team gear, and it's like the rest of the team is at the finish line, probably giving them the same jazz. I know one group of guys, they were firefighters. I think they were doing the 50K. Um, we watched this one guy try to rally. There were four of them doing it together. He tried to rally his group by sprinting up this entire hill and then he like collapsed at the top and we were just like, way to go, you guys are awesome. And he actually came up to us afterwards and he said, like, thanks a lot, guys, for pumping us up coming up that hill and for giving us the support at the finish line. That meant a lot to us, and you guys really helped us out. So it felt good to just like show up with the logo and to give that positive vibe to
Uh-huh.
everybody. But then it's like, oh wait, I got a blue shirt, I got a white shirt, I got a dark gray shirt, those are our boys. And I get up on top of this little mound and I just start going like this and yelling out. And what do I see? Jamie. He's like, oh, I already got this flag on the poles, bro. And it's this signal and it's this like victory cry. And we
Hmm.
see them come up and we go and we give them all the hugs. And we fly the flags and we get these great photos of the three of these heroes coming up. And then I get back to the line, I get the video of them coming across, and it's just I mean, like, what was it like for you to watch your three guys come across in that moment when you've got zero in the tank? Like, it's amazing that you can even like open your eyes and come to the race, like, because you look like you were like half asleep the entire time, actually like 90% asleep. So, what was it like watching them like come across and come to the race, and what was it like to feel that with everybody who had also been out of the race?
Yeah, so I guess I finished up at 7:15 or 7:30, maybe 7:45 by the time that everything distilled or simmered down at my finishing spot. And then my sister and Lath brought me back to the house. And honestly, it was so bizarre that once I got that sourdough banana bread in me, like certainly I was tired and certainly my body was hurting, but like getting in and out of the car was pretty okay. Uh, Being in the car, getting back to the house was pretty okay. Um, my sister helped me set up an Epsom salt bath right away, and getting in that was pretty okay. Um, it was nothing like an Ironman fatigue where like I finished the Ironman, like literally at Ironman Florida when I finished in November, like my body went into complete chills instantly. I could barely even move anything. Like I cramped the moment I finished, the moment I crossed the line. Then I remember being on this massage table for like 30 minutes and the lady could just like barely wiggle me and getting on and off that table, like I could barely even do anything. And um, I think that was just a reflection of one, like I thought my body was really well trained for the effort. And I think that the limiting factor was the emotional fatigue and the lack of fueling relative to my calorie burn, right? It wasn't that I was physically unable to move my muscles, right? And so I was able to get back and sort of like, polish myself up a little bit. I took a little bit of a nap, connected with you and Dylan and Brandon after you guys had grabbed breakfast. We recalibrated on the plan. And I think that one other huge value of being with the team for this whole experience is that like there's just good vibes around the team. And so it's way different than you finish this heroic monumental effort and then you're just like alone sitting on the couch for all day or multiple days. Instead, it's like we're already chopping it up on the race. Like you guys had finished what 8 hours ago. So like I'm getting to hear how you guys have been doing. I'm getting to hear from Josh Payne. Like I'm connecting with him. I'm seeing about his foot. I'm seeing Libby. I'm seeing all you guys. And so I'm getting to like immediately get the good vibes of the whole team morale. And I think that made a difference for everybody's recovery, honestly. And so getting over to the finish line, I wasn't actually nearly as tired as I expected to be. It wasn't really any big deal, and because I was almost a little bit nervous about that. I'm like, fuck. And I remember at Ironman Florida 2022, I finished the race. We had a little condo that was just like a mile from the start and finish line. And so I went back to shower and get some food. And I remember sitting on the couch and being like, getting off this couch and going back to the finish line is the hardest thing I've done all day. But this was super different. I felt pretty good. And yeah, it was just great to already just get right into chopping it up on how the race went. And so I'm hanging at the finish. I'm talking with Brandon about like, how did everything go for you? How are you feeling about it? What have you been reflecting on so far? Like, what are your immediate takeaways? I'm giving him some tactical guidance, on some coaching things that I saw from him. He's sharing with me from his athlete perspective on how things went for him in training. And like, we're getting right into learning from the experience. And we've got everybody around the finish line, and then we hear that they're coming. And it was actually pretty well timed. I mean, we were probably there for maybe, I don't know, 45 minutes before they actually finished. But in Ironman, when people are following the tracker, there's kind of always this sense of like, is somebody going to come right now? Oh, it ends up being a little while later. And like, there's probably just that sense of urgency in an Ironman and with the more frequent time checks that like people are expecting things to be happening more quickly than they need to be or should be or are. In this, it was like we had an update with them, I don't know, a couple miles out, but then it was like, oh, wow, they're coming around the bend like really soon. And so there wasn't this long period of where are they? Are they coming? Like we didn't really have that at all. And just seeing these guys finish, it again just made me super proud. Like it was really special to have anybody finish, right? And to have three finishers finish together, to have everybody who fell short on distance, right, be there to support them across the line. Um, it really like solidified the whole team mindset and how them crossing the finish line was a shared victory for everybody. And, some of the folks who finished at 51.8, like they were still victorious in their effort and they might not have made it 100 miles, but they got the lessons and they got the unlocks that they individually needed from this experience. And them then being there for the three guys to finish, like that was a real representation of that truth being lived out. And it was very special. Louis crossed the finish line. He gave me a hug, instantly started sobbing. I'm like, I know that feeling, dog. Let's go. I know that feeling big time now. Um, it was amazing to see Jamie and Trevor, and it was also cool how they weren't like crippled, right? Like they were exhausted in some sense, right? They've been running for 34 and a half hours, but like it's not like they crossed the finish line and collapsed, right? Like there was good energy around everybody. Of course, the whole team is there. Everybody's hugging, everybody's high fiving. We're hearing from them, dude, how'd it go? Holy crap. Like, how are you feeling? What did you do? We're getting into that. Charlie's there. Um, and yeah, it was just really, really cool. Um, we hung around there for, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes after they finished. And then everybody as a unit, we piled into whoever had driven there and we all headed back to the house. And I think that for me, like my favorite parts of the post race experience were hanging back at the house for, I guess that would have started at around 4 or 4:30 through, I don't know, probably 8:30 when everybody started going to bed, 9 or something like that. Um, I was hanging on the back patio with Jamie, hearing about how everything went down for him. He was icing his feet in a bucket, half falling asleep. Spina was out there. I'm chatting with Spina on how he can get better instantly. We're all talking about it. How can we get better? What did we learn? Like everybody is right back in process, which like I just love that, man. That's the whole value of endurance to me is like the process of learning through experience is what makes this so fun and what makes this so addicting, man. Like we're all competitors. We all want to get better. And there's no better way to learn how to improve than by throwing yourself into a freaking crazy challenge. And we just got to experience that in real time, and all the lessons were being shared and discussed and played out right there. We immediately got to see like what did these three guys do, what made them unique. One, it stuck out to me that they're all the blue collar workers, man. These guys are just tough, dog. A lot of us are hanging out on the internet all day, and the three guys that are working with their hands, waking up at 3 in the morning, Jamie's working 48-hour fire shifts, like, dude, that stuff shows up in stuff like this. And it made me think about coaching and how can I include some of that kind of grunt work mindset into training a little bit. How can I toughen some of my boys up, myself included? um we immediately reflected that Jamie, Trevor, and Louie, they're the three guys that smile the most. They are the three guys that smile the most. And all three of those guys were okay to be out there for the full 36 hours. Those were the three big things that stuck out to me. So we're chatting about all that stuff. Um, Cam, just consistent position of service to the team. He was a real hero and hooked up some amazing barbecue takeout. So we got tons of barbecue, and we're all just sitting around the big dining room table, right? We got every single person. And if you looked externally, you would have no idea who the finishers were. You might have thought we all finished, honestly. And we're hearing from what was the thing that you did best, what was the thing that you screwed up that you've learned from the most. Like we're all just getting to dish on that in real time. And it was just like super, super special. And I also like, for me individually, being able to hang there with Louis, like, Louis is the guy that started this whole thing for me, right? He was my first ever endurance athlete. Um, and he and I have jointly taken down some big things together, but we've never totally gotten to just like chill post event and be together in person and just chop it up. And so like to see him just like in his element like that and to get to just like talk it up was super, super special. Um, and yeah, I'd say that we just, as a whole team, continued to just wind it down for the evening. Josh Payne, Jamie, and I, we hopped in the hot tub. Brandon was out there with us for a while. You had popped out. Blaine had popped out. So, we're just continuing to just like dig deeper into the experience and like pull more out of it. Like that's really how I feel about the whole team vibe and the team house and the hangs and all that is it's like if one person just goes and does 100 miles, like I don't know. I feel like some people just like they have like freaking two ideas on how it went down. And maybe like, they've got some depth to their reflection on it, but like getting to hear other people's perspective, it was constantly like, oh, I didn't even think about that. Oh, that makes me draw a parallel to my situation at this other point in the race. And so we were just like pinging off of each other for hours. And
We're still doing it.
we're still doing it. Like we're doing it right now. We
This is
did it
four and
last
a
night on the
half. This is
symposium.
4.5 hours into the race recap, and we're still pinging each other, dude.
We're
Like,
still pinging it. Josh was just sharing something on, we've had a bunch of reflections in the Zion team chat on like different perspectives on failure and coming up short. It was pretty cool. Candace Burt, that chick that was trying to run the entire Arizona Trail, 800 miles in like 14 days. She was trying to get the fastest known time. She's the chick that ran 200 ultra marathons in 200 straight days. And when I saw her doing that, I just assumed that she would succeed. And she fell short. And she had a post on that. And it was cool because when I saw that, Josh had sent it in. I was like, there's 0% of me that thinks that she failed. And if anything, I actually think that she's more heroic that she went at something that broke her. And so for all of us to be able to continually lean on these little lessons and these little shares and examples of learning through failure and allowing this experience to be a huge success, like that's another value of the team, right? Like if I go try to do something solo and come up short, maybe I don't have all these perspectives.
yeah, I mean, it's just so awesome to have everything sort of manifest and realize itself in the way that, we've been building and that you've envisioned for quite a long time. Like the thing that I thought back to was the first Tribal Cafe pod that you and I did, which was about finding the subjective meaning in objective losses, talking about our failures, right?
Dude,
And
there's
it's
no
like,
there's no such thing as a coincidence. How crazy is that? That's the first cafe.
yeah.
And then we're building to
And
this like, pinnacle type of a moment that is just part of the process as we've all understood now. But
yes, sir.
like it was such a great opportunity for us to like live out how we view this stuff.
Yep.
Take
And
ownership of all of our mistakes, but also be like, because of those mistakes, I learned XYZ, and that's how I'm growing and getting better. And so
yeah,
that's why this whole thing was a huge win.
yeah. And that's why in the moment at 51, I'm walking around saying, like, this is the best.
Mm-hmm.
This is the best. I'm so glad this happened because this validates our team and our tribe concepts and the ideals behind what we're doing here. Newsflash to everybody, we aren't like this is a personal development club that masquerades as an endurance training team. We train for endurance, but the reason why we train for endurance is to bring out the best of ourselves. And as long as that occurs in whatever endeavor we are undertaking, we win. We win. And that's what happened. That's why nobody needed to say anything in 51 tent that the race was over, because it was just understood. And everybody had already, because of the team concept and the literally being with other people had already come to peace with that and had already found, we're already finding the positives. Do you know what Dylan and I were talking about for the final half mile when we were coming into the aid station? How are we going to get better for the next race? That's Dylan's like, I already know how I'm training better. I already know, like, I got ideas. And I said, this is the conversation I want to have. Let's go. Like, I don't care about finishing the race. I'm jazzed up about the fact that we are literally failing this race. And already we're trying to think about how do we get better for the next one. And we're not moping and we're not sad and we're not depressed. We're actually like tapping into aspiring and rising energy in the moment when people think we should be crushed. Like, I remember in the like, God bless this aid station lady. It's like, how the heck is she supposed to know? But like, I'm watching the scene go down in 51, and I got to get up, and the emotion's too heavy, and I'm just like, this is the best. We're winning. I can't believe how beautiful and awesome this is. So I'm kind of crying, and she comes up to me. She's like, it's okay. It's really hard to go 51 miles. It's like you did a great job, and it's like I get it. You're trying to console me, but it's like you think my energy is down here and I'm like I'm so up here, and there's no chance that you even understand that, because who would ever think that in a moment where you think it's we're all being crushed? No, actually we're all rising. Like, we're all rising right now, and that's the true value of the team, and that was just played out constantly in the stories of the 51 and of the 70 and of the 100 that these guys got. And it's so funny. I remember talking to Louis on the Monday morning, and it's like, Louis, how you feeling? It's like, dude, I've never recovered better from any
Yeah.
100-mile effort before. And I asked him, like, so why do you think that happened? He's like, oh, I think we had a really protein dominant meal last night. Like, it's more protein than I've ever eaten before. And I just had to like sit there for a second. And then I said, Louis, you don't think it's the fact that we're in a house with all of our teammates and like the energy is just so positive? And he sits for that, and he comes up to me like an hour later. He's like, you know what? I think you're right. I think that is why I'm recovering a little bit more and a little bit better. And I just like, well, yeah, it's not the protein, bro. It's like, it's the love. It's the fact that we're surrounded by 15 filled hearts, right?
Yeah.
And that everybody is like, there's no ounce of like remorse or regret, or if there is, nobody is projecting it onto anybody else and ruining their experience, right? So even if some people maybe have a little bit of like a hurt ego or something, they're not, the positive energy of the team is forcing them to just show up and to be supportive in the moment either way. Um, so like when you're thinking about the team and the value of the team, one of the sayings that we have and like we like to rest on in the group is like that the glory fades fast. Like the olive wreath wilts in a day. The ancient Olympians, when they won an event, you get a natural olive wreath crown, and by the next day it's disintegrated and it's over. And is it to say your accomplishments are temporary and they're not everlasting? And we talk about this as a way to be like, when you finish the big race, there's going to be a letdown. You're actually going to feel bad. You're going to be a little bit depressed because you do this big thing, and then it's like you kick back into normal zone a little bit too quickly, and the glory kind of like is gone. If we've got a helium balloon for an example, it's like we need to let the air out slowly so that the balloon doesn't fly off away, right? And that's kind of what happens after the race. It's like you have all this air, and then the air is gone. Being surrounded by the team in the house and actually being able to come to grips with the failures or the losses together allowed us to release the air at the appropriate pace so that we didn't all fly off the handle, and we could grasp the meaning, the value, the lessons, the breakthroughs in real time, and like have everyone's experience be incredibly positive. It's not possible without the team. It's not possible without the team concept and the camaraderie that was built just in the house the couple days before, the group calls, the team strategizing, all of that. So that's why we were such big winners, because your vision of what you wanted this team to become and me realizing that your vision was my vision and that you could build it better than I could because I'm an ideas guy and you're a builder guy, right? Like, and seeing it playing out in the most hyper real fashion where everything clicked and everything we were trying to impress and like through the community with the lessons and our own exploration. I mean, like, it's not possible to win anymore. Oh, and we got all the emotion and moments on video too, which I was just like, I'm so glad Charlie's here and capturing this so we can prove to everybody that our concept is the truth. We are the truth, and we're the only people who have this right now. And it's just super validating for what we're trying to build, and that's all based on your vision and your leadership, and it's just beautiful, dude. And that's why we were all able to win. We were all just able to win in that moment.
Yeah, dude, so beautiful. Well, it's a joy to build this together. And there's a couple of things I just want to add that color in what you shared there. So the idea of the glory fades fast, I feel like we also need like a secondary line in that because the glory of finishing the 100 miler, like that is what fades fast, but it's like the depth of the experience and the lessons lives forever. And like the legend and the story of our experience, that is what lives on.
Oh,
And the
I like this. So it's
development that we've extracted from this through the team approach is what allows our effort to live for eternity.
the beyond. Yeah, it's like the crown wilts, but the legend remains. Oh,
Yeah.
let's go.
Yeah. And I really want to shout out Brandon. So Brandon and I spent a lot of time out on that trail together, and Brandon's race did not go the way that he expected. And he fought harder than he'd ever fought in his life to make 51.8. He conquered more distance than he ever had in his life. He was out on the trails for longer than he ever had been in his life. And he walked away with an enormous PR, but also an enormous humbling. And in our chat yesterday, he shared a line that I just think is a real reflection of his character as a man and also just who he is as an athlete, looking to get back into the process and improve and not looking to just get the glory and think that's going to change everything, right? And he shared a quote that I wrote down word for word. He goes, I don't think it would have been a good thing for me to finish because there were some very big gaps in my understanding, my execution and training, and my attitude that I would have been able to pave right over with the accomplishment of running 100 miles. That is the kind of dude that I want to be around.
Nailed it. Nailed it. Champion Brandon. 10 for 10 was easy. 10 for 10 was actually the easy road. That's like well, we want to do hard things, but like the hard thing, we don't want it to actually be too hard that's going to actually break us or bring us into like contact with failure. We want other people to think it's really hard, but we actually want the effort to be relatively easy for ourselves. That's kind of like a little bit of the illusion people play in these types of games, right? And the thing that everybody got, which is what we all needed, was humility. It's like you feel it so viscerally and in that hyper real fashion. Um, and we all, if we're interested in becoming better versions of ourselves, it's like that's what you need to feel. You need to feel humbled and appreciative that you are being humbled. So it's not
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, I'm humbled and I'm kind of pissed off about it because I have to nurse my wounded ego. It's like, no, I'm humbled and I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the failure because I needed the lessons. Like I needed this. I love how he said like papering over the gap because going 10 for 10 would have allowed everybody to create these almost like false stories about themselves, about what the effort was and what we needed to do to get there. It's like, this is so much better because this was real. This was real. And that's what we're after here.
It was real. You want to chat a little bit on how we're running it back next year?
Yeah, let's go. We were making plans in the hot tub. Like that's
Yeah.
what was going on. Like the night of,
Well,
like we're not
that was literally part of the discussion of how do we improve is like, okay, well, there's one layer of like, okay, well, how do you, Spina as an athlete improve? But then there's also like, me as the coach, like, how do I improve this entire operation? And the immediate takeaways as we were just working on this collectively as a team was number one, creating the option for multiple race distances, not having every single person need to do the biggest one. And then number two would be breaking the team down into much smaller groups. So you're not trying to move 9, 10 as a unit together. Right. And so what we have put together is running back the Tribal Ultra VIP experience. We are going to be doing Antelope Canyon Ultra, which is in northern Arizona, same general area of the country, a little bit east, a little bit south of Zion. It's another race put on by Vacation Races, and they've got distances from 55K up to 100 miler. And we already have 8 of the Zion crew is running it back. We had Blaine, Pacer, and crew added in now. He's going from Pacer to Racer. If I had to guess, I'd say all Zion folks are going to be back. There's just probably 2 of them that are figuring out their schedule or something like that. We just opened this up to the folks inside tribal training, the existing tribal training athletes, and we've had a handful of them jump on board already. And we are going to be opening this up as an opportunity to join tribal and to be a part of this experience. And we are basically 10, 11 months out. So we've got time to build towards this. And we are going to be basically repeating, but also refining and improving this experience. Everything from, a similar iteration of weekly calls with the group in the 2 to 3 months leading into the race, the team house experience, the workshops in the team house, the race planning, the race prep, the pacing strategy, the gear bag strategy, and basically, bringing as many people as we can into this shared experience so that we can continue to push ourselves in these adventurous and extreme ways. And so we can do it as a team where we are growing as meaningfully as individuals as we can through this process.
I'm just so pumped about this because the runway on this is not this year or next year. It's like multi years that people are going to want to be in this sort of mode of competing alongside of the same people and getting better as a crew. And it's like, yeah, right now we're not experimenting with the big group anymore, but it's like, dude, like I want to try to get a big group across at some point. Like how,
Definitely.
oh, like it's like we were a bit like greenhorns up on Zion. Zion's like expert level. That's like going right to level 10 at the video game, like going to hardest mode first without going through like, beginner, medium, and like we didn't do that. So we're gonna go back to we got our humbling lesson. We're gonna refine the process. We're gonna come back with something that works. And if the idea is eventually, yeah, let's go 10 for 10. Like, who do you think's gonna get on that 10 for 10? Like that is a hand selected, you're the elite of the lead, and we know that you've done it sort of thing. Um, and so we're really creating like we're really realizing this idea of like the team, and I compete on a team and I show up with my teammates, and it's not a one-time thing where I'm just going to a race and I'm going to get the medal at the end of the race and then it's on to the next thing. It's growing together, being athletes together, being teammates, being brothers and sisters, integrating our families, like sharing life stories and life paths with these people who you share these experiences with. Everyone is searching for meaning. Everyone is searching for community, and we're splintered a lot in the locations that we live. And being able to reach out in the digital space to people who share your values, share your dreams and aspirations, want to do the same things that you do. When you actually meet up in person and you go do the things, this isn't something where you're like, well, that was nice and we'll go do the next thing. It's like, no, I need that again. And I need it even more real. And I want it the next time to be even deeper. And, when I hear like that, some of the people on, when you tell me it's like everybody on Zion Crew is coming back, it's like, well, I, in my heart, I kind of felt like weren't we all in this together team? Like, like, and not, obviously if someone's not coming back, like it's, there's circumstances and reasons, and that's totally fine. But there's a strength of wanting to do it all again together. Um, so if you got the chance to get in now, because like I'm telling you, people, and you can come back to this tape, I don't care however many years forward, but this is going to be true. There will be a point where you're going to want to get a part of this and you're not going to be able to. You're just not, because there's only so many spots. And not to be elitist, but it's kind of like we're going to ride with the people who we've ridden with before. Like, and if you want to be a part of this VIP experience, get in now, because the people who get in are not going to relinquish their spots very easily. And there's only so many spots to give. And we want to be able to share it with as many people as possible. But sorry guys, like we're the hot band coming up. Like you can only see us in the local club for so long before you got to start buying the big arena tours, and then you got to bring your binoculars to see us on stage. Okay? Sorry, it's true. And like if you are serious about joining up with us, now is the time. Like now is the time, because we will have to start saying, yeah, you got to wait. There's just too much. There's too much demand, because we've all felt it. You've all listened to it in this podcast. And if you don't want to be a part of it, then like that's cool. But I know that a lot of people listening are like, I need to be a part of that. And come and join us. We want you.
The reality is that there's only so many spots in a team house. So
Correct.
it is
Correct.
limited in that sense. We're not just randomly picking a number and saying we're capping it at that. The other thing that I would add to this is that like 55K out in the desert is a wonderful entry into big time endurance. It's probably what 55K is probably 34 miles or so.
Yep.
Um, it's going to be beautiful landscape. I was telling the guys on the symposium call last night, you're probably running 30% of the race, maybe less, depending on how it goes, but it's a lot of hiking, it's a lot of walking, so it's very doable. And if you're somebody who wants to get into endurance and you want to be a part of some kind of team experience, like this is 1,000% the way to go. The other value in how we are thinking about this, and me as the head coach and the founder of Tribal Training, is that we are continually working to guide guys towards being process driven. And we have a lot of folks who come in, with the do hard things mindset, right? We've got that too. Like that's a huge strength. But, and I would say, in addition to that, is that like it's really special that like, I've gotten guys to do a 70.3 with 8 weeks of prep, right? And do something amazing on a short timeline. But the reality is that the shorter the timeline, the less depth there is to the development that happens through the experience. And if you're thinking about something that's nearly a year out, if you're part of the team already, and this is something where you've already done a handful of competitions with us, like I really want you to see that this is just a continuation of you being bought into your own process. And you don't need to overhaul your entire life in order to go ahead and do something like this. It's just a slight restructuring of training. It's a slight recalibration of your schedule. Make sure you can physically go attend, right? But getting away from the mindset of, oh, this is a pinnacle thing, and getting back to more of a mindset of, I'm just in the process of pushing my body in endurance, of living with adventure, of creating experiences, and of surrounding myself with people who like to attack life the same way. And I want to go ahead and do something big in person. And I want to be on a team that builds a plan to attack a race and goes out and tries to accomplish something huge. And hey, even if we come up short, I know we're going to be getting more than we ever imagined out of the experience, because that's just the kind of team that we are. And that's the way that we develop. We're not sitting here hanging our heads saying we didn't hit 100 miles. We got our heads held high saying, dude, look at all the things that we learned. Look at all the ways that we can get better. And so
Yeah,
we're running it back.
and then within a few hours of the race, like how can we go after it again? Like because we are not satisfied. We're content and we're appreciative, but we're not satisfied because we are competitors and we want to go after it. Like we definitely want to go after it. And one more thing that comes with this, you get the most awesome photos. You get to feel like an absolute pro. Okay, like they have like those like fantasy camps, like you go to like the Yankees fantasy camp and you get to wear the pinstripes and you get to play some games with the old pros and you get the whole experience. Okay, you want to feel like you're really an athlete, like you're really arriving and accepting that identity and getting to live it out. Come live in the team house. I got my little guy in the background here. He's doing his little 2-year-old thing, so I hope it's not bleeding through. But that's another big part, and being photographed and videotaped and interviewed, doing the podcast, dude, like the team podcast, like where we're all sitting around and you're on the mic with us and we're getting videoed and we're going to be up, like all that comes with it. So you not only do we get the camaraderie, the experience, the coaching, the workshops, you actually get to live out one of these dreams that I think a lot of us have is like living and being as an athlete. Way to
Totally.
go, little man. You're a champion. Woo!
Sweet dude. I think that's a great place to wrap it. We'll probably do a couple more podcasts, maybe on like tactical lessons and learnings and stuff like that. But this was a great way to just document the whole experience. So thanks for the time, dude. We're running on about 5 hours of race content here. This is amazing.
Epic.
In just the race recap, not full race
That's
content.
you already did 4 hours driving back from Boulder yourself, and like we're gonna be getting once this goes live, we're gonna be getting pinged from the 7 other people on the team. Like you need to bring me on, and I got to tell my part of the story here. You guys got 5 hours to talk about your race experience. Like, give me 40 minutes, dog, at least, right?
Yeah. No, no doubt. I had Josh Payne on yesterday, actually. We recorded his, so we'll be making our way through the team for folks that want to contribute to the pod log of the story that is Zion 100.
Yeah.
You just muted yourself.
Sorry, we're good. And because we didn't go 10 for 10, it's like everybody understands that there's like some sort of a Zion 2.0 redemption tour coming as well. So this is also just like the pause of the story.
Yeah. Yeah. Zion, maybe it'll be 2026. Who knows?
Maybe. We'll see. I guess it all depends on what happens at Antelope Canyon and how that experience goes. If we need more lessons before we go back and take on the big bad boss of Zion, then that's fine. We'll take more. We'll eat more humble pie, and we'll go back when it's ready. But yeah, yeah. I mean, what I put in the chat, I'm like, return to Zion just has such a nice ring to it for the team. And it's like
Yeah,
we already know it's out there. So we'll be back, Grim Reaper. We'll be back. Don't worry.
no doubt. All right, we're calling it there. Adios. Thank you for listening.
Peace and love.